tan of a man.
No, he was into tanning. He like
Oh my
promoted it.
God.
George Hamilton. George Hamilton, who starred in Love at First. Oh God, we're not even going into.
Welcome to George Hamilton hour.
Welcome to George Hamilton talk. No, did he fake? Did he fake tan?
No. Well, I don't know.
He just incredibly was tan.
No, but he was into it, and that was why it was funny that he played Dracula in Love at First Bite. Famously, the children of the night. Shut up!
See,
like,
it goes back to
howling, he's trying to play the piano.
It goes back to monsters.
Oh, such a. It does. This was actually. This is why it
where
came
we
up
started.
yesterday. Is because it's like weirdly my favorite bad Dracula movie. It's such a great. I mean, it's great. It's terrible.
Hi, Wednesdaisies.
Hello.
Welcome to the Wednesday Club. Where we talk about George Hamilton, not George Harrison.
Not George Harrison. That's my fault. The coffee is just kicking in.
So you were described as like, I will watch this vampire movie starring George Harrison that I didn't know existed.
No, there's disco music in this movie and disco dancing. It's great.
Amazing.
Hi, I'm Matt.
What are we doing today?
Amy Dallen, Taliesin Jaffe. Today, in honor of October.
Halloween season!
And Halloween, as Amy pointed out, we're doing monsters. We did villains last week. We're doing monsters today. Next week, do we want to go ahead and announce what we're doing next week?
Yeah, we might as well.
Do we have it confirmed?
You're taking
confirm.
Take it.
I'll take it. We're talking Hellboy next week. We're talking
with
the internet's own Liam O'Brien is coming in.
Liam O'Brien. Air horns.
All the Hellboy things that happen.
Who is that?
He's a voice actor, I'm pretty sure. I think he is famous for playing Risk, if I recall. I think he plays Risk on the internet, on America Online. It's pretty good.
On the AOL? Well, not anymore.
Not anymore. Wow.
Not anymore. Well, talking to monsters.
We're extremely psyched to have Liam coming next week to talk Hellboy. There is 25 odd years
There's
of it.
so much
Hellboy.
So,
interestingly enough, I think that Hellboy first appeared in San Diego Comic-Con.
there's some art of him in like a preview book. But his first appearance was in X-Men, right?
I think so.
What?
I think so. But I think his
I don't know
first
any of this.
appearance was in a San Diego journal of some sort. Yeah, Comic-Con journal.
So much.
Because, I like to have first appearances, and that's why I know that stuff.
I only have a passing knowledge of Hellboy. I've read a little bit
Well,
of
I'm excited.
Hellboy.
So if you want to get ahead of next week, that would be Hellboy, like Right Hand of Doom, Conqueror Worm. Then there's Baltimore. There's Lobster Johnson.
So we should clarify that Hellboy is
BPRD.
a character written and drawn originally and created by Mike Mignola, whose name I don't know how to say.
I've always said Mignola.
Mignola?
I feel like Mignola. We'll look it up.
Migmin.
This is the thing we should know.
This
He's
isn't easy. We'll know it by next
famous
week.
and important.
Yeah.
He did one of my favorite Doctor Strange stories. I always get the name wrong, though. It's
Triumph and Torment?
Triumph and Torment. Thank you. I always want to say Trials and Tribulations, and I know that's not right, and then
that's
I get
good.
stuck in my head trying to figure out what T's it actually is. Yeah. Triumph and Torment.
He's a fantastic writer and artist who created sort of an original character that led to an original universe over at Dark Horse Comics.
Yeah.
Many of you will be familiar because eventually they adapted it into 2 feature-length films, and they're working on a new one that will come out starring that guy from Stranger Things.
I think so.
David Harbour?
It's a reboot.
Who was also in for Cable for Deadpool. He was like one of the second or third choices. And
Grizzled.
I personally really love that choice for Cable.
No, I'm into it. I'm into it.
So, but Josh Brolin, he'll be good.
So Mignola wrote and drew The Adventures of Hellboy for many, many years, and then as a writer and sort of editor, guided like a whole universe out of it with the BPRD, Lobster Johnson, Abe Sapien, Witchfinder, tons and tons of surrounding material. No, we do not expect you to have read all of it for next week because we're cutting ourselves some slack, and we will probably not have successfully read every single thing in the Hellboyverse. So Liam can come school us.
Yeah.
It's going to take us on a journey. It's going to take us on a journey deep into the realm of BPRD.
We saw him this weekend at Marisha's bachelorette party.
Sure,
he was
there.
excited. He was telling us he's very excited to be on
Excited to be on the show.
So,
Talks about the show. There you go.
He claims to be excited to be on the show.
Yeah.
We know Liam. He
I'm
loves lying.
Controversy. I don't know. It's too boring a story if it's like he's coming, we're excited, we hope he's excited, we all have a great time in the end.
He's relatively interested about talking about comic books. It's going to be vaguely amusing for him.
But that's next week.
That's next week. This week.
This week is monsters.
And there's a couple other.
Monsters.
I don't know why I turned into Regis Phil. It's monsters.
Monsters.
I turned into like
It's a
Regis
lot,
Philbin
man.
all of a sudden.
I'll say we have a couple other little announcements. We made a shirt apparently.
We did make a shirt. Look at that.
Oh God!
You're wearing the shirt.
I don't know how that happened. I don't. It's just manifested.
It's movie magic.
This is my final form.
Photoshop something else over it and then have it like reveal something.
Yeah,
like,
just.
just a weird 70s jacket.
I would love. I would actually
disappears.
love for it to have like the Captain EO T-shirt. It's just another part of me like Gleam at the moment.
Amazing.
It's just just going. That'd be great. They should light up. That'd be great.
Can we see the back from the shirt? I'll show off.
You've got one to show off as well.
Where can they get this beautiful shirt? Like, come on, they're so
They have to come on
good.
down to the studio because this
pretty.
is where we have it right now. But you can order your own on Amazon.com, where you look up
Type in, I think it's Pride Wings.
Pride
Wednesday
Wings.
Club?
Yeah, Wednesday Club Pride Wings. So, and it's got the stamp on the back, and
I
it's
love
got
it. I love it so
Approved by our
much.
Wednesday Club.
Yeah, it was very fun coming up with the shirt and making it. And I'm quite
And I know
pleased.
we want to try and get other shirts out there and
There'll be
stuff
other
like
shirts
that.
someday.
But those are announcements to possibly be made some other time.
Yeah,
We've
it's a
even
thing
seen
that
some
happened.
tweets from those of y'all who picked up the shirt so far, and that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you
You should
so
probably
much.
tell people the reason that it is not. You're gonna have to echo this out because I'm not mic'd. The reason it's not on the Geek and Sundry store is that we were invited into a pilot program through Twitch and Amazon, and this is our pilot show.
Oh yeah, so Amazon actually like has this thing where they were doing a thing with Twitch of making Twitch shirts, which is why it's not on our Geek and Sundry website. It's on Amazon. It's because they're like, hey, we want to make some Twitch shirts. How about a Wednesday Club shirt? And then we literally just got invited to do this by Amazon. We're like, okay, let's come up with a Wednesday Club shirt.
Let's do it.
And we did it.
And we're proud
It's a
of
pretty
ourselves.
good one for today as well.
It is because it is it national or international? I suppose it must be. I'm calling
That's
it international.
weird. Everybody says national, but there's no reason it can't
It is
be
Universal
international.
Coming Out Day. And in lieu of this, I will remind everyone that Professor Marston and the Wonder Women is hitting theaters, I think, this weekend.
I can't wait to see it.
And I hear everybody who I know who's seen it says it's amazing. I'm really excited. And
I haven't heard any reviews on it yet.
I've heard a couple reviews. I've heard
Good.
more than a few, and they're all really positive. And who knew, like, it was William Marston, Elizabeth Marston, and Olive Byrne, who are the creators of Wonder Woman, have a biopic. And of all the biopics I thought that were going to get made first, this is not the biopic I
Nope.
expected to get made for. I was like, I had a list. It's a long list of people who I thought were going to get biopics first.
Like how many spec scripts on Stan Lee do you think are out in Hollywood at this moment?
The rights have already been picked up 2 or 3 times. There's the one that's supposed to be like an adventure story. There's a different one that just got moving recently. There's I don't know.
Yeah,
I
there's
want
so
the
many-
Mad Men
yeah.
style bullpen story.
Probably a
that.
Kirby biopic out there. Probably a Morrison one waiting to happen. And there's also, I was going to mention Cavalier and Clay, which is a novel.
The best book of all time.
It's a great book.
The best book.
That
It
is
so good.
Kind of a history of comics, and like all these things that could have happened, but like, this is the movie that got made. How did that happen? It's amazing, but how?
Because someone out there loves us.
Someone out there loves us. Someone out there loves us all. So
What's the director's name? Angela something.
Yeah, no, I'm blanking on. I've
Robinson,
even like seen
maybe?
interviews with her now because she's fascinating, and
Yeah, I'm so
she made
excited.
a weird Herbie the Love Bug film, which bless her, it's a whole nother story.
So that's
Yeah.
our fingers crossed recommendation from the Wednesday Club. We're very excited to see how they handle the story.
It's a deeply fascinating story.
Also, we should mention we still need to get a name for our letter column.
Yes.
So yeah,
Right?
keep
Thank
submitting.
you. Your responses have been pouring in for the name
Yeah.
for the official Wednesday Club letters column, which will be where we share feedback and stuff you all have made and things like that. But in the tradition of comics, we need you all to name it. We've got some great options already, but we're going to leave it open
Till Monday,
We're
were
thinking
saying?
Monday next week. If you can get us suggestions between now and Monday of next week, submit them via Twitter or the Discord or Tumblr. I think, what are the best ways to do this?
As long as there's a
Twitter, I think, is
hashtag,
probably the
Twitter's the best
best,
because we'll get the hashtag Wednesday Club, but it's possible we'll see them on Discord. And if you're in the chat, we will. Can we say we're doing this? Is there a prize
yeah,
if we
yeah.
pick?
Yeah, I think that's why we have the deadline of Monday. Is you get a shirt?
So you get a shirt, not
get a
this
shirt.
shirt,
Not
but
that shirt.
You will get a shirt that is appropriate to your needs, if we use your name.
If we use your name, we will try to reach out and get your info, and as soon as we've figured out the actual mechanics of that, we will get you. Thank you for
Yes.
Thank
your
you
very
for
own
naming
shirt.
it, yeah.
Keep figuring out what camera.
And I guess if you don't tweet, then maybe just like team up. Everyone is friendly. We have no problem if there's. I bet there's someone who can vouch for you because I know there was at least one person who was saying that they're not on Twitter and they'd like to submit something. So just talk to somebody in chat on Alpha or on Twitch and like if they can pass suggestions on, we will be very grateful.
Yeah. While we're in the letters call, well, first of all, Ken win.
can win.
Oh my God!
Ken Wynn
He's
like
so good.
killed it with the Werewolf.
Yeah, no, I feel like we tapped into something here. I think
Werewolf by Wednesday over here.
Werewolf by Wednesday did very well. Why are we calling it Werewolf by Wednesday, by the way?
I like terrible jokes.
We're calling it Werewolf by Wednesday because there's a Marvel character named Werewolf by Night, and it's one of the
What's his real name? This is the best part. What's his real name?
Jack Russell.
Yeah.
Jack Russell
His name is Jack Russell. And I would like to point out that in every single incarnation I've ever seen of him, they love drawing him without his shirt on, and that dude is ripped.
A lot.
They love drawing that dude with his shirt off, and he is cut from stone. He is sculpted by Leonardo. And
No, he
Michelangelo
is
together,
he is not bad. He is drawn that way. It is.
He is.
Oof.
Yeah,
He's a-
baby, he's drawn that way.
He is.
He's not bad. He's drawn that way.
That's their wolf. Yeah, right there. Sorry, I don't know where I'm going with that.
Before
Today on Sexy Werewolves.
Today on
we
Sexy
get into
Werewolves.
that, though, I do want to point out a couple weeks ago when you guys were both out, and we had Whitney Moore come in, we did a Metal AF episode, and the 5-minute topic was name your metal band and what heroes are on it, and I named mine Tortor and Phantom, after the theological concept of the torture of the infants and all this other stuff. Fan Nick Seepman, am I saying it correctly? Seepman? Nick, I need you to tell me if I'm saying your name correctly. Wrote a heavy metal song from Tortor and Phantom. He's the same guy who did your Goth Boy song last week. He did a heavy metal song. Zach, do we have that, Chief?
I'm so
Did
excited.
you already listen to it, or are you listening now?
I've already listened to it.
Oh, we were supposed to surprise you. Damn it.
Oh, you already knew about it? I thought it was surprising you guys.
I've barely been on Twitter the last 2 weeks.
So
I haven't seen anything.
We're surprising you.
Because I've been like knee deep in gather your party together and
no,
like
understandably,
other things.
understandably.
So yeah, I'm so excited for this because I keep like vaguely seeing things flash by me on Twitter. So
Yeah, it's amazing. Like this Nick guy, talented guy.
Is this one also with I'm Cillian, or is it just Nick?
I think it's just Nick. I didn't see any other names connected to it. If we're wrong, please correct us on Twitter, because we want to give credit where credit is due, certainly.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for this to
Do
run.
we have a live chat run?
I do not have a live chat. Let me see if I can get a live chat coming up.
We're gonna get the song. Can we do it, Chief, or should I not have said anything? Okay.
In the meantime,
Bam.
Okay. Cool,
well,
cool,
in
cool.
the meantime, we're doing monsters. What I mean, like, there's the classic Universal monsters, which are
Sure.
Dracula,
Frankenstein.
the werewolf, the mummy,
The Mummy.
uh,
Basically,
and Creature from the Black Lagoon.
the cast of Monster Squad.
Monster Squad, yeah, the cast of Monster Squad are the classic Universal monsters.
That movie.
By the way,
I love that
I
movie.
love that movie.
They could have built a universe based on that, and that would have been like a multi-movie universe I would have gone in for.
Dude, it's
Monster Squad.
surprising they haven't revamped that. Like,
Monster
that's a
Squad
property is
versus
right.
the Goonies. I dropped it. I dropped it.
Oh my God.
I know.
You want to do both songs?
There's 2 songs? I thought there was only one.
Your song.
Matt, you
Wait.
want to hear your song?
I didn't know my song was done. I
Okay,
only knew
that's
about-
the surprise.
I
Sorry.
only knew about Torture
I'm
and
bad at
Phantom.
surprises.
I have a song? I didn't know about that. Oh, that's awesome. Oh
Yeah.
my God, that's awesome! That's so, show it again!
I've changed the course of my peace life. In your face, my one hand. This Bible put aside. Comics have changed the course of my peace life.
Oh my God, that's so Sixpence None the Richer. And, oh, that's so beautiful.
you. It's so you.
I love it. Oh, that's
my
so
God.
great.
I'm gonna guess that's from Nick and I'm Cillian, right?
That sounds like them. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh my
Thank
God,
you
can
to
we see
both
the
of
art
you.
again? It was so pretty. I didn't. Oh, look
Oh,
at
look at that.
Oh, year one, Meki, year one. I like it. Look at the cross on the Eye Megamoto. Oh, that is so. Oh, you guys, that is amazing. Well done.
The rosary beads with the Eye Agamotto.
Oh,
hello, werewolf.
that's
a whole nother
Werewolf
thing.
by Night. That's not me. Thank you so much, guys. That is beautiful. That is a gorgeous song.
Ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Yeah, play us a little bit more than
That's a little bit more in theme with monsters too.
You're going to play a little bit at random.
It's totally cool.
iPad
This
monster.
is Tortor and Phantom with the Midnight Suns as the actual band. Like, our fans are
What is
pretty
happening?
rad.
Yeah,
This
the best.
amazing.
Oh my God.
Yeah, all right. Now we're in the mood to talk monsters. All right. Yeah, thank you guys. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Aw,
This is you guys are nuts.
Our
This is
fans are
crazy.
ridiculous.
I love it. Ah!
This is the best job ever.
Yes.
All right, let's talk monsters.
So there's the classic Universal monsters, and then there's kaiju, which are kind of the new. There's like the big,
Yeah.
like the kaiju, the big Godzilla, Mothra, Pacific Rim.
So I have a question
Kirby.
about like monsters of that scale. They seem to beg a different sort of like existential or literary question than monsters of a closer scale for us. You know what I'm saying?
I think
Maybe,
I think it's more of a threat to civilization than a human being, except for Gamera.
It depends. There's sort of the idea of like where does a monster end and a creature begin, or where does a monster end and a fable or a fairy tale begin?
Sure.
Like there's blended borders between all of those things, but you do get commonalities where a lot of the traditional monsters can be seen like in metaphorical lights that representing different human fears or ideas, and you obviously get the fact that like Godzilla and many other early kaijus are big metaphorical tales about human fears. So
Yeah.
in that sense, I think they definitely belong in the same discussion.
Yeah.
But you do get sort of there is some difference between the ones that come out of like human stories of like, and then like giants, we wouldn't usually like giants like Norse myth giants, we wouldn't
Yeah.
usually class them as monsters in this kind of discussion.
Yeah.
They're just sort of a different mythological, like sometimes really threatening stuff happens and steps on your village. That's sort of like weather as a metaphor, or
Sure.
literally giant beasts.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a giant beast to creature to kaiju, which blends into the sort of metaphor, human fear area, which blends all the way over, I think, into like fairies and mythology, right?
Sure.
Well, I guess I'm coming from the standpoint of like kaiju. I mean, it's certainly out of the atomic age. Kaiju are like we did that. Like they're a result of our meddling with nature and science and physics and chemistry. You know, all that
But
stuff.
some of those monsters, like you get in like Mothra, who is basically just like a almost god creature from or Mothra is actually a lot similar, I suppose, to King Kong, which is a creature
Like an
of
ancient-
a land forgotten, who is
Yeah.
then brought. I mean, where it's still human meddling, but it's not necessarily
Yeah, where does King
hubris.
Kong fit into all this?
I mean, like that's I think a disrespect for the past and disrespect for
Classic man versus nature kind of story.
it's man's hubris over his own destiny as opposed to just science.
Yeah.
And where I mean, like, but you could also say that Godzilla on that level has a lot in common with Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Of the hubris of man's knowledge. Vampires are I mean, like I have, because of my work and because of Helsing, I have read a lot of books about vampires.
Oh, do you like vampires? I never knew that.
It's
about
gone
you.
beyond liking vampires now. It's just sort of something that's a part of my life.
Oh, I had no idea.
It's
That's
like
so
fingers. I like
surprising.
fingers, but you know, vampires are often about repressed sexuality and issues of sexuality, and they tend to revolve around issues of human repression, which also often will interconnect with racism and sexism and taboos of the time.
The new woman, she's coming. She's gonna shake everything up.
Oh, that was, and in fact, the vampire that was for was Camilla from In the Glass Darkly. Was the very first look at the threat of female empowerment as a vampire was Camilla in The Glass Darkly. And yeah, it was there's vampires are go in the whole direction.
Yeah.
I don't know the Mummy. The Mummy doesn't make any sense to me. I do love a good Mummy movie though.
Yeah.
I love
What
a
about-
Mummy movie.
What about
Well,
a bad mummy movie? I'm just
Some
kidding.
of the
love a
original
bad one,
mummy
too.
stuff ties into sort of the idea of like it's scientific hubris as almost applied to kind of weirdly like a colonialist critique. Like shouldn't have gone into that tomb, didn't belong to you, consequences rain down on you.
That's very solid,
like
actually.
I'm not
It's
sure
like
they were
a-
really meant that way because people really hadn't gotten to the maybe we shouldn't be doing this point, but like that's
It is the
interesting-
consequence of colonialism, which is fascinating.
The bad side of it would be sort of like going to these lands where everything is mystical and scary, like it's hardcore Orientalism.
But then we got the Mummy. We got the Mummy movies with Brendan Fraser, which are just such a great. Are really actually kind of like
Those
like
are
they
pretty
get.
fun.
I haven't
Well, and
rewatched
they
them.
and
I
they
don't know if
get
they
the,
hold up,
oh,
but
they
I
are.
liked them very
I've
much.
recently watched them. They hold up really well. They do it. They
Really?
do a good. They do.
That is surprising.
They do a
And I
very
don't mean
good
that as
job
an
of like
insult.
acknowledging the problems with the genre, but still managing to make the genre work. They have like I'm so embarrassed that I'm forgetting the character's name. Like, this is really embarrassing me. The librarian.
Rachel Weisz.
She's
That
like
character?
the character is amazing. The
Yeah.
character is
Now I
well
wanna
written.
look- I'm gonna look
Has
that
got
up.
has got some of the best dialogue in the entire film. I mean, like, every character is really well rounded. Every character is fun. Even kind of the snivelly art, like bad, vaguely racist archetype is given. Lenny is given more to
Evelyn
do and something.
Carnahan.
Yeah, it's just such a. There's a lot of good in that, and it also is one of the that I can remember the first like hardcore Persian characters, because they have the friend that all of the war like the desert nomads show up, and like they have that's like this really well-rounded, powerful hero that shows up who's like, I'm here to keep you fucks from doing anything stupid. And,
Yeah.
it's a good. I can't speak to the rest of them, but that first one is.
Yeah.
Really
Second
holds up
one,
well.
meh, but the first one was fun.
Yeah.
And that's all it was supposed to be. Like, they weren't trying to like rewrite film history. They were like, this is going to be a fun movie and make us $1 million.
It's
totally
better than it should
agree.
be. It's better than it should be.
But also, comics.
Comics.
Oh, yeah, that's what we came here for.
Thank
So
you.
There, but I
Yes.
did have a point in like I'm trying to establish like a scale
Yeah.
for
What's a
like
monster?
the monsters, like for what a monster is and what we consider a monster. So like we've got like Mummy, we've got that stuff. Then we have kaiju, but then we have like Lovecraftian existential stuff. And it feels like all of them are preying on completely different fears, but they all still fit this scale of monster.
Yeah, I didn't really
right?
hit much of the Lovecraftian, but that's a good point. In my little list, I made a list, and there's not a lot of Lovecraft.
Well,
in there.
There is a massive and far-reaching influence of Lovecraftian
yeah.
horror in comics, so
Very
maybe we
much.
should put that on the board for long-term.
Well, I did, just to bring it back to that, I wanted to try and hit something from every single one. And I saw, I had always wanted to read Alan Moore's Neonomicon, and I never read it before.
Huh.
So I was like, I'm going to read that, because that's monsters. And it does have monsters in it, but it's also Alan Moore, and it's, there's
Boy,
it's
that's a
only,
sentence.
It's only 4 issues. It's a fast read. But I had some trouble with it.
I started that one and decided it was maybe not for me.
I've never read it, but I'm already laughing at the notion of it. Like I'll give it a read later. I'm excited.
Yeah, there's a giant Innsmouth-like fish monster that comes across the hero of the story, and Alan Moore really likes sex.
Okay, no, I already can tell where this is going.
So I'm just gonna stop there because I
right.
really don't want to talk about it too much. But I was like, I'm gonna read a Lovecraft because we need to get Lovecraft in here, and that's Alan Moore. You got to read Alan Moore.
I will say, I have
Ooh, oh
heard
boy.
that
Oof.
the follow-up to Neonomicon, Providence,
Providence is where I should have gone.
is apparently quite well regarded, but also contains a lot of very difficult subject matter. So I haven't quite decided whether I'm jumping in there, but,
Boy,
it's
already-
well reviewed.
This already makes me
Yeah.
feel better about what I'm going to make everybody read for the end of the month. So that's good.
I got Providence. I just didn't get a chance to read it. So
I haven't read these
It
either,
takes some
so I'm gonna-
turns.
Yeah. Oh, I bet it does.
Alan
After
Moore.
having read Neonomicon, I bet it takes some turns.
But yeah.
But if you like that kind of stuff, then you should.
It's never
go read,
it's never a gentle lark with Alan Moore, is it? It's never.
Afternoon tea with Alan Moore.
It's never like the green diamond, the green triangle going down on a sled. You know, it's tends to be a
smooth ride.
black diamond course all the way down.
It's a bumpy one with portals into dimensions you didn't know were
Yeah, that's-
available.
Speaking of which, we're not getting into them probably today because we spent a whole episode on them, and we love to recur to them over and over again. But shout out to Alan Moore's Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which
Yeah, no, we
contains,
should- I mean, we
among
should-
all the hits a ton of the original Swamp Thing run hits a bunch of classic horror types of stories, and then Alan Moore revisits them sort of with a twist, and does some really beautiful things, including a one-shot about werewolves, which is one of my very favorite things. Do you know the one I'm
I don't
talking
know
about?
that one. Tell.
No, bring it.
Tell us.
How do I? It's just called The Curse, and I'm not sure I want to talk to you
Okay.
about it. It's one issue, and it's a standalone story.
It's an Alan Moore one.
It's one of the Alan Moore Swamp Things, and it's called The Curse.
I love a good
And it
werewolf.
has a sort of controversial ending, but it's very interesting.
All right, I'm into it.
Well,
I'll put it on the read list.
So here's kind of what I was thinking we could do in terms of the comics to start kind of where the monsters started and just work our way forward from there.
Bring it.
Like, so I did a little bit of, I did some research and like in all the Comics Code stuff that I've been looking into. Like, it feels like monster comics really didn't fully start to evolve until like 1949, 1950, about 10 years after the medium was more fully established. And that came in the form of EC Comics with Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, like all that stuff. But those were a lot of times zombies.
But zombie
and
didn't quite mean what it means now, right?
No,
they were
zombies-
early incarnations of
Yeah.
zombies.
Zombies,
They
yeah,
were
the
still-
definition of zombie changed with Night of the Living Dead. I mean, like, yeah, there was a big shift in how zombies were.
Yeah, a lot of times they would refer to them as like ghouls and stuff like that. So there's a lot of ghost stories in those early EC days. They didn't really have too many monsters, and if they were monsters, they tended to be science fiction-y aliens or subterranean dwellers, stuff like that.
Mole people.
Yeah,
Lot
mole
of mole people in
A lot of mole
comics.
people.
But
We should do an episode called The Comics Underground, but instead of actually talking about like Zap Comics and all of the independent scene and all that, it's just an episode on subterranean
Just
dwelling.
Cave
Just
Cave
Mole Man.
Carson
Just
has
cave
a
people.
bionic eye.
and
Yeah.
Cave Carson,
Yeah.
yeah, we can do that. I'm on board. I'm totally on
man.
board. So the Comics Code comes in around 1954. Horror comics can no longer exist under the code. The monsters change because they can't be dead, like they can't be that kind of stuff. So the monsters have to start changing. So they just become these giant radioactive monsters of the Atomic Age. And that's where you start getting the Marvel books of like Strange Tales, Tales of Suspense, House of Mystery, Journey into
Note,
Mystery.
this period between the Gold and Silver
into
Ages
Mystery.
is sometimes called the Atomic Age because the few superhero characters who got created during this time tended to have sort of atomic-themed powers, but it happens to cross over into this. And it's the Atlas era of Marvel, right?
Atlas
Yeah.
era, yeah. So like a lot of the if you go back to like Strange Tales #1, it's Atlas is on the cover of it, So they were able to survive a lot with monster comics. Jack Kirby did. Oh man, I forgot to pull this issue, but he did the giant turtle in not Strange Tales, Journey into Mystery. I want to say maybe I pulled that image. I don't. I pulled a lot
I'm
of.
trying to think.
I
I remember all the
I
great
showed
names.
you. And
Yeah,
then I
we were
forgot to
staring
pull
at the
it.
giant turtle. It was hilarious. It was amazing.
But
Can we make a game that's like name of Jack Kirby monster or gibberish syllable? It's like Gagoom!
It was Badonka, the living turtle.
living turtle.
The turtle that walks like a man.
Well, I think so. My favorite monster that he did was Orgo.
Orgo.
Strange
Orgo!
Tales #90. That one I do know I pulled.
By the way, by this time he had already co-created Captain America, co-created a ton of other World War II characters, worked for like a few different companies, and invented romance comics.
Yep.
So this was just, the next act for
This
Jack
was-
Kirby.
yeah.
He taught us how to love. Now he teaches us how to fear.
How to fear giant hypnotizing.
Orgo, the unconquerable!
And what I love about this is that
Oh man, look
he
at that.
does all of it at a circus. He invades a circus, like he comes from space, invades a circus,
Sure.
hypnotizes all of them.
Is it? Where did it come from? It isn't part of the show. That's literally what it says on the cover. That
and
just made me so happy.
I believe that he is defeated by a
I would give
gorilla.
anything for a giant person
at
in an
the show.
Orgo suit to come in right after you said this isn't part of the show.
isn't part of
I
the
gotta start
show.
planning these things.
You really like 2 steps ahead. Well, you are, to be fair, drinking out of the head of a.
Of a monster.
Yes,
of a Kirby
classic monster. Before he was a Guardian of the Galaxy, he
I've got his original appearance written down here.
Was it
somewhere.
Tales to Astonish?
I think it,
And he was
Tales
from
to Astonish.
These
Tales to
names that we're
Astonish.
throwing out, and you may have picked this up over time watching the show, but for those of you who don't know, comics have often alternated between having a title dedicated to a certain character and having a title that was just a rotating spotlight or a place to put anthology style a bunch of different stuff. This was both a way to give your readers a ton of variety, to make them feel like they had good value because there were 3 or 4 stories in each issue, or sometimes only 2, and it was a great way to like try out material to see if somebody merited getting their own title later. So especially in this day, Tales to
I was gonna
Astonish
say
just
Groot,
meant tune
the
in next time
monster
for
from
something
Planet
cool.
X. I remember Groot was a conqueror from Planet X. He was very articulate.
Yeah.
Behold, I am
I'm
Groot,
Groot,
the invincible.
invincible.
Who dares to defy me?
So you see,
I defy you, Groot.
he doesn't
Frank
just say
Capra.
I am Groot. He didn't start doing I am Groot until Dan Abnett was writing for him, and it wasn't even that.
Did that not happen till the Abnett landing run?
Nope.
Oh my God.
And
He
in
got-
fact,
he got
it
brain
didn't
damage.
even happen until after the Annihilation Conquest
Yep.
storyline. In that, he was still able to talk.
He was,
I think, if I remember
he
correctly.
could still talk, and he was really snarky.
Yeah, and I don't think it was until Guardians of the Galaxy #1 by Lanning and Abnett where he was like, I am Groot.
He
I
had
am
been
Groot.
he had
I am
been he had
Groot."
been blown up. He had like
That's
the big
right.
explosion when he
Yeah,
came
yeah,
back
yeah.
as Tiny.
all he could say was I am Groot, and it was funny at first, and then they kept it going, and then they're like, just let everybody understand him and just went with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. My favorite is that they described his language as, it's not the I am Groot. That is actually like the ocean that, like, it's sort of like the water that provides for the fish. It's like the man, I'm missing this metaphor up terribly.
I was just
am,
going to TARDIS.
It's basically, it's the inflection of how he says I am Groot, the space between I am Groot, how he pronounces some of those words variously. It's like,
I am Groot.
yeah.
Yeah.
And my favorite is when I think they had the Realm of Kings crossover, and he
man.
and Maximus were building like this giant machine to save the universe. And I am Groot is like, I am Groot, I am Groot, I am Groot. And Rocket's like, oh my God, shut up. And Maximus is like, this is the smartest dude I've ever talked to. He's incredible, guys.
I wish I had loaded this up. There's a variant cover, a recent one, that was him, I think, face to face with Jean Grey, young Jean. And it's sort of like she can see everything he's really saying but in the background while you're just looking at him saying, I am Groot. Like, man.
I think I remember that, but now I want to see it just to make sure.
We'll find it.
Didn't occur to me
I think
to.
that was in the Groot limited series. My buddy Jeff
Oh.
Loveness wrote that. Hi guys.
Hey!
Hey, it's
No,
Dr.
if you're
Navarro.
going to come over, say it into our microphone so people can hear it.
My buddy, can I come over?
Hi, buddy, Jeff Loveness.
Come
Just
on
say
over.
I am Groot and I'll translate for you because you have no microphone.
I think that was it, and that's a variant cover for all new X-Men. My buddy Jeff was a writer for Jimmy Kimmel for years, Jimmy Kimmel Live, and he wrote a bunch of Marvel comics, including the Groot limited series, and he's also the most massive X-Men fan I've ever known, and he loves Cyclops and will defend Cyclops. Scott
Whoa.
Summers.
Oh, man, I
Jeff
love
is
Cyclops.
Jeff's a good dude. So
He's awesome.
when he did the Groot series with Brian Kessinger, I believe was the artist, was like a Disney artist.
Yeah.
He made sure to include like X-Men characters in this Groot 6-issue, when Groot gets separated from Rocket Raccoon, which is really great. But you guys threw up that first appearance of Groot, which if you guys haven't seen those fantastic reprints, because Marvel was celebrating Jack Kirby's 100th birthday.
Good call.
And one of those reprints was the first appearance of Groot as a kind of an homage to the Monster era, Tales to Astonish. And that issue and I bought it, and I just read it like maybe a few weeks ago, and it's great.
Oh,
It's
fuck. Okay,
great.
I'm into
It
it.
is
It's
great.
great the way that the random human guy is able to defeat Groot, the invading alien, is termites. Because that's how those comic stories worked back then. It was like 6 pages of like, and then at the end it was like, and then termites was the thing that defeated Groot because he was like telekinetically moving all the wood on Earth to come and become a part of him, and he was just unstoppable and very articulate. And then the back half of that issue is the first appearance of the Hulk, but not Bruce Banner
prototype
Hulk. The prototype, just the name, just the word, because it's Zenmu. That big furry beast character that's appeared in Marvel Comics later was also called by a bunch of people in that story. He's some kind of a Hulk because he was this. It doesn't make any fucking sense. He was this biological robot alien thing that landed on Earth. This guy finds
Stanley.
it,
Yeah.
saves him by like plugging in transistors and a bunch of 50s sci-fi.
Stanley. Yep,
Saves him, brings him back to life. As soon as he comes back to life, has hypnotic eyes, and Zenmu enraptures everybody on Earth to build this huge rocket for him that is so powerful so that he can get back home. It's going to be so powerful that as soon as it takes off, it's going to destroy the planet. But for some reason, the one guy that can't get hypnotized by him is the one that found him. And needs to find a way to stop him. Zenmu, there he is right there. He's some kind of Hulk
From the Magic Planet.
from the
my
Magic
God.
Planet.
Good work,
Zenmu.
Chief. You're amazing, Chief.
He came back
Yeah.
later
God.
in Marvel Comics in the 70s with a similar story. Zenmu did. And they even referenced it in Marvel's, Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross's masterpiece Marvels, where in the 4th issue, Phil Sheldon, who's the protagonist, the photographer, he's got daughters at this point. And these daughters who've already lived through the 60s and now they're in the 70s. This was the issue where Gwen Stacy died, and they covered that again. There's one panel where he comes home, I think, and he's just like, I can't deal with this anymore, because he's reeling with the loss of innocence of the Marvel age, which was Gwen Stacy dying. And there's a panel where his daughter is watching TV and she's holding a Zenmu doll. Because he comes back and becomes like a children's TV type. So they even referenced it in that thing when Zenmu came back. But Zenmu's first appearance, and he was called Hulk, or a Hulk, was in that Groot first appearance, Tales to Astonish, whatever that was thrown up
So
there.
if you're looking for
Tales
these
to Astonish,
reprints,
yeah, 13.
Many of the
It's like a-
companies
it
have
was
these
like
nice.
$1.
Yeah, they've got these nice cheap
So great.
reprint schemes. Marvel's that will have the banner on the top that says True Believers.
Yes.
So talk to your shop or look on probably Comixology. I haven't checked.
I
It's
haven't
probably
checked either. We'll
available.
take a look at it.
But look for True Believers. They're reprints of classic first issues. They do them like every time, like when Logan came out, they did a bunch of Wolverine
Yeah.
stuff. When Deadpool came out, they did a bunch of Deadpool stuff. And for Jack Kirby's 100th birthday, they're reprinting like the first Ant-Man, the
Yeah.
first appearance of Groot, all kinds of great
An
stuff.
early Iron Man, and if you can't find that, there's one.
Yep.
The True Believers X-Men issue #1.
Yeah, they're usually $1.
If you can't find the Groot one in stores, I know that the Groot story is also reprinted in a Guardians of the Galaxy movie trade
Yeah, the
paperback
prelude kind of thing
prelude
they
from
do,
the
yeah.
first Guardians of the Galaxy 2014. So if you find that in a Barnes and Noble, that Groot first appearance is in there.
Also,
reprinted.
we've pitched it to you before. Get Marvel Unlimited.
It's the
Yep.
best.
It's $10
Ooh, I'm
a
reading
month.
I
Marvel
hate their
2-in-1
interface,
right now.
but I love
What's
it.
that?
Agreed
Yeah.
with you, Amy. I'm reading
Oh.
Marvel 2-in-1, the classic Thing teaming up with stuff, and I just read Thing, Ben Grimm teaming up with Spider-Man taking on Thanos, and it's like so great. It's so great. I didn't realize they had like all that old shit in there.
Oh
too,
yeah,
which
it
is
gets
awesome.
deep. It's a deep
It's
deep well.
deep well.
This is a fun show. I gotta
Nope,
go,
too
guys.
late. You live here
Bye,
now.
buddy. Thanks for joining us, Hector. Bye. Yeah, well, he brought up Thing.
Thing.
Thing is a monster.
Is Thing a monster? People have been asking like, what is the technical definition?
Here's what I would say. So
He's monstrous.
He's monstrous, and he's like this monster. Like
Which,
there's
okay, you can't just throw that off. This Man's Monster is one of the greatest stories of all time.
It is.
It is an issue of Fantastic Four, which deals with super angsty Thing and deep in his feelings about whether he still feels like a human post-transformation. It's called This Man, This Monster. That was like, I hadn't been working at the store long, and we got this super trash copy of that in, which is still like some money, but like, they were like,
not
this thing
too-
is ruined. We're going to put it in the dollars. And then they were like, we're not going to put it in the dollars. Take it home. And I took it home, and I was like, Jesus, that's so good.
Yeah. that's
Fantastic Four
yeah.
from the 60s holds up better than almost anything from the 60s.
Yeah, like Fantastic Four 1, it's all right. Fantastic Four 2, though, 3, 4,
Dynamite.
5. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
They're all
killer.
great.
And I can
great.
say this with full, like, I love my X-Men. 60s X-Men is rough. 60s Fantastic Four holds up amazing.
Holds up
Yeah.
really well, yeah.
I would agree.
But so there's, I wanted to point it like.
Okay, thank you. Sorry,
No,
that
no.
was all because you said This Man
oh
is
yeah,
a monster.
no,
Yeah.
I'm with you on all that.
So, like for me, Thing is an directly pulled from those early days of Marvel with Strange Tales, Journey into Mystery, all that stuff. Where like they were doing monsters all the time, so they had all these designs, they had all these ideas for these things. So why not? Like you could like when you're trying to meet these
even if you go,
crazy
what
deadlines,
was written on the cover of the Incredible Hulk of the first appearance of the Incredible
is
Hulk?
he man or monster,
or is he both?
or is he both? Yeah.
So I mean, like it is like a constant theme of something that's more than human, but like and usually like physically like a physically visible or altered human, some idea of something meta or beyond human.
Although it's interesting because that points out some weird vampiric qualities in the origin of Spider-Man.
Yes.
He gets bitten by something which changes his physiology in a way that's not obvious to the casual observer. Like, but they had a lot of monster DNA running through those early
Spider-Man.
stories.
Yeah, and very much it's the
Vampire.
classic treatment of Spider-Man is very much the misunderstood monstrous creation. He's given a lot of negativity and sort of and so much angst.
Interesting that you bring up his monstrous qualities because in the last Spider-Man that Stan Lee ever wrote, Spider-Man number 100, he turns into a giant spider.
He does. He
turns into an actual Spider-Man. So I'm just trying to point out like we're like monsters. There's a massive history of monsters leading to heroes or like to villains. Batman. Like Rogue Gallery has Killer Croc. He's kind of a monster. He's got Man-Bat, who is a monster. Like he's a giant freaking bat. He's
And then,
a
of
monster.
course, both Marvel and DC literally have Frankenstein and Dracula and other characters in them as characters.
Yeah, I mean, like you've got Justice League Dark, which it's got Constantine and Zatanna, but it also has. Who am I thinking? Like, it's got other monsters in there. Like, why am I blanking on everything all of a sudden?
Well, there's Madame Xanadu. You get the others showing up. Shout out to the short-lived but very fun Frankenstein Agent of Shade.
Man, okay, so that's actually on my list.
Okay.
Because Frankenstein, Agent of Shade, and before that, a 4-issue miniseries of Frankenstein from the Seven Soldiers of Victory is such a great monster book. It is such a great horror book.
This is a DC book.
This is a DC comic book. Grant Morrison, when he was doing, and this is me again going, Grant Morrison.
Take a
Do
drink,
you
people.
like Grant Morrison?
I love Grant Morrison. I love him. I love him so much. My love for him knows no bounds.
I just need a thought bubble. And his face.
My love for him makes it all the way into like issue 3 of Sebastian O. It goes very deep. This Frankenstein book is, I mean, he gets the tragedy of the character. You really feel, he's basically, it's the idea is it's the classic Frankenstein. He's a reanimated corpse but he's kind of has superpowers, and he's been sort of walking the earth for centuries now, and he's.
Thanks. This is the one I brought up first, which reminded Taliesin both that he was going to talk about this one and about the Seven Soldiers one, which he's currently talking about, but I don't know what that was called.
So behind him is also the Bride of Frankenstein, which is kind of his female counterpart, and they end up working for this super secret, like, anti-horror, anti-monster agency called SHADE, which is led by a man named Father Time.
Probably inspired by the Hellboy Bureau of Paranormal Research and Development.
Yeah.
And he really, like, they deal with, like, deeply horrific, he's very much, like, goes in, finds like the source of like this whatever contagion or something, if there's somebody who's like started to like infest people with like a weird creepy virus which is making everybody crazy, and he's the one who comes in and burns the entire city down. It's just and he's always very poetic and very eloquent, and but they really do a very good job of like portraying him as this really horrific walking corpse. It's really intense. He's got a sword and it's great.
I meant to look this up before the show today, but hopefully one of you guys did, so I'm just going to throw it out there. When did the Creature Commandos start?
The Creature.
I want to say the 70s. Oh God, I'd have to Google.
Is this a DC or a Marvel? Because I know that Marvel has the Howling Commandos, and they were originally the Legion of Monsters. Is this?
Well, the Howling Command. Well, that's a whole.
Wait, Creature Commando.
Yeah. I think they are.
Now I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's driving me nuts.
I believe it's probably the 70s, because the history you were laying out for us, you get to the code comes in, cleans everything up, no scary stuff, no sex, no bad guys winning.
No crime,
no cleavage.
Can't challenge authority.
So that stuff sort of, and it restricts them, so that they try to get creative. They lean into like monster stories that are about giant lumbering types. They lean into the couple of new superheroes, and things really, hey.
Oh wow.
Oh, nice.
Man.
The Creature Commandos. I feel like they went back and like retconned them into World War II as well, which is
I'm looking it all up for you right now, so keep talking while I get this
But so the sort of the first boom of the monsters is like 50s, right?
Yeah,
and
early,
the second,
the early 50s before pre-comic code is ghouls, goblins, ghosts, like
traditional
decaying
horror,
flesh,
like we think.
horror. After the comics code, they can do atomic age monsters and stuff like that because they're just so silly and ridiculous that they can't really be scary, but they're still wreaking havoc, and it's still a fun story.
So they're trying to crack what they can find room for in the code. The 60s superhero revolution comes around, obviously, as we've noted, drawing on a lot of that DNA. And then essentially there was a loosening of the code in the early 70s, late 60s?
I believe it was 1969, and that was with Spider-Man, I think 97.
Did that directly lead to the loosening of the code? Because I know there was a loosening of the code that let the monsters back in.
That challenged the code enough to, as far as I understand the history, Stan Lee was like, no, this is an anti-drug thing. I kind of don't care about the code for this. I'm still following a majority of the rules from it. I'm just talking about drugs in a negative way, by the way.
Yeah.
And then it didn't affect sales in any way. And up until then, as far as I understand it, again, the publishers were created the comics code as an answer to the public outcry.
To prevent themselves from being regulated.
Exactly. And then that happens like 15, 20 years later. All the guys who were following the comics code survived the comics code scare. So like they're still like gun shy to do anything, I think. So like Stan Lee was like, you know what?
The fear was that no distributor would carry them without the little badge
exactly.
on there.
So I think after Stan Lee challenged it, and by challenging it, just not doing anything with it, he just said, you know what? Just these issues, we'll go back to it afterwards. But then Green Arrow, Green Lantern came out and started doing their thing, and I think the code realized,
this was a notable socially progressive sort of like relevant run that's very, very famous. O'Neill and Adams did it on Green Lantern.
By the way, we're getting some great questions from the chat. We are We are collecting them.
Sorry,
I'm collecting them. Just so you guys know,
And
we are seeing
my
these.
timeline is probably off. I need to go back and look at it. I'm probably remembering things incorrectly, so I apologize if I'm giving misinformation. It's not intentional, but from what I understand, after he challenged it, the Comics Code was like, you know what? Actually, that was okay. And then I think that they saw
Keep
other
themselves
publishers kind
relevant.
of doing it, and they were like, we're going to loosen it up. Because I think sometime around 1971, 72, that's when you get Werewolf by Night. That's
Werewolf
when you
by Night,
get
you get
Swamp
Swamp Thing
Thing,
over at
Man
DC.
Thing. That's when you start
So-
getting a lot of these horror concepts. You get Morbius coming in
And it's
to
funny 'cause
Spider-Man 101.
I'll also say
that would have been
yeah.
probably just before the loosening, because it's a famous example of getting around Morbius is a famous example of getting around
the code.
the
'cause
code
he's-
restrictions, because he wasn't allowed to be dead, so he's a living vampire.
He was literally Mobius, the living vampire. Yeah, so it's there's a whole.
But yeah,
So
so this
Creature-
is the second wave of horror, basically.
Creature
in the
Commandos,
70s.
November 1980, and Weird War Tales number 93.
Weird War Tales is a strange and wonderful book. It's basically Weird is a code word that used to mean going to have some supernatural or horror or fantasy elements. Like back when weird sort of meant creepy. Like Weird Tales in the 40s would mean this might be spooky or
Yeah.
confuse you, or So Weird War Tales is not like, oh, an odd thing that happened in war. It's like a weird combo monster military book.
So it says here, this is Wikipedia, sorry. In 1942, Project M created the Creature Commandos. They were Lieutenant Matthew Shreve, a normal human. Warren Griffith,
The greatest monster.
a werewolf. Sergeant Vincent Velcro, a vampire.
Vincent Velcro.
Private Elliot Lucky Taylor, Frankenstein's monster. And Dr. Myrna Rhodes, a Gorgon.
Yeah. Who names a Frankenstein monster Lucky?
Yeah, and he's a private?
Well,
Come on, he's easily
he died
a
and
sergeant
he came
in
back to
arms.
life, so that's
He's
pretty
just,
lucky
he
already.
hasn't been around that long.
Fair enough.
You
fair
can't
enough.
get
He just got in.
seniority. Well,
I was given a note, by the way. At Danoba was actually the writer of Matt's song, by the way. We didn't give a proper
no,
shout
Dino
out.
was probably telling
know
us
that.
that the writer of Matt's song.
And the lyrics were written by Tangy.
Okay.
Miss Sunflower
Miss
94.
Sunflower. Miss Sunflower.
So this is not.
Oh,
Dinoba
yeah.
didn't write the
Yeah,
song.
no, the
but
writer.
Dinoba's letting us know.
Letting us know the writer didn't get. So it says Tangy from Miss Sunflower. Thank you for.
Thank you.
Thank you for this.
That's very
we got it.
important.
I'm
Very
going
important that
through
we
the
do that.
chat trying to grab things as they come through.
That's
So-
awesome.
That is
Thank
bloody
you, Miss
awesome.
Sunflower.
Doing it properly. Also, please submit topics because we are collecting these things. So if you want a topic for our 5 minutes at the end of the show,
Oh, yeah, we
please,
gotta do
please,
that.
please start throwing them out there.
That's probably going to be what monster do you want to kill your child?
So I mean, like. Some other
Matt's
like
not over it.
Man Thing. We were asked somebody in
If
Alpha
you don't
Chat.
fear, you burn at the touch of
The man
Man Thing. I don't know. That doesn't really work
Arma
with suspense.
1917 was like Man Thing. Is Man Thing just Marvel's Swamp Thing, or is there more happening there?
I don't know, because he was also invented by Len Wein, correct?
Yeah, it was another Len Wein creation, I believe. But it was
Yeah, he was like,
less.
here's Swamp Thing. You know what? Here's also a Man Thing.
The companies did a lot of knocking off, and some of it worked out real great. Darkseid and Thanos, Darkseid and
Yeah.
Thanos
Yeah.
worked out just fine.
Man Thing took a much more sinister turn, though, I will say, than Swamp Thing did, and Man Thing
How
also
so?
has. It was portrayed as I don't quite want to say a villain, but definitely an anti-hero for quite a while. Though he did join the Thunderbolts briefly. I'm not kidding. Despite not being able to talk, really.
Yeah, he can't
and
talk.
Making people sick just by touching them. He joined the Thunderbolts.
I thought they spontaneously combusted if you touch.
Like
if he
he-
touches you, you burn, correct?
Yeah, like terrible things happen. It depends, and there's like an
I think
acid
burn
burn.
probably has a couple different interpretations. One being a
enough.
literal
And then-
burn, and
fair
one
enough.
being sort of like suffer.
But then he also had teleport, and I'll actually say being a man thing. I'm not even sure how to gender the creature because he has no face. He has a trunk. It's like an elephant trunk. It's
And
really,
I'm going to say it
it's a
just in case
weird
nobody
looking
else will,
character.
but there's a long-standing tradition at Marvel of making an extra oversized issue and calling it giant size. So one of the all-time classic
I have
comic
that-
book
I have that
titles.
locked
Say
away.
it, say it.
One of the all-time classic comic book
Oh,
titles
man.
is, of course, Giant Size Man Thing.
I have a copy.
Yeah,
I
it
bought
was
one at a
a bunch of his appearances were in that.
I bought
Giant-sized
it
Man
at my second Comic-Con ever. I was with Matt Mercer, and we both giggled over it so hard we had to buy it. It was $30. and
Not
worth
sure how
every
the
penny.
code let that one go.
The code wasn't looking at titles.
It was like giant size this, giant size that, giant size the other.
Like, oh, it's a giant-sized man thing? Yeah. We got it.
It's like
You're
a man
good.
thing,
You're
but
good.
bigger.
And also
Thank
for
you,
someone who
Chief.
doesn't know what is the code, we also have Winchester Winchester, Alex, what is the code?
Oh, no.
Basically, really
We
quick.
got to do an episode on that.
Oh, we're going to do a whole episode, but super quick. Basically, there was a moment where it looked like there was going to be federal regulation about what you could put in comic books in the 1950s, and in order
Everyone
to
was
avoid
panicking
that,
about juvenile delinquents and saying, like, they hadn't yet established that
Corruption
comics
abuse.
were for everybody. They were sort of like, there's some gross stuff happening in comics, and kids are buying them, and they will be corrupted and turn into demented zombies.
so sort of the comic industry created a code for themselves that they would abide by and hopefully avoid getting
Federal
regulated
regulation,
by the federal government. But in doing so, kind of created such a constricting set of rules that they almost suffocated themselves. And it's a whole thing.
It was the Comics Code Authority. It lost power over the decades and officially kind of stopped being a thing in 2011.
The irony that as we said that the Wednesday Comic Code Authority had an update.
Oh my God,
As
that's
if
funny.
they knew that we were talking
Blue
about.
screen, blue screen.
So yeah, that's another.
So yeah,
problem.
the Comics Code is a self-policing organization run by comic book publishers, kind of
which is more or less
separate
defunct
from
now.
them, but it was a set of rules that almost destroyed the industry.
It's if you're a film buff, it's like the Hays Code. It was just intended to sort of keep them from getting put out of business forever. And only a couple of people went out of business.
So
we'll get into it, but yeah.
That's a whole other
It said
episode.
things-
There's a lot to
We're,
it.
and like we're still in we're bouncing around from the kaiju style monsters to the more classic horror monsters, and even there's some talk in the chat room about the sort of there's a lot of villains who are just sort of heroes and villains who are very much victims of circumstance, like Clayface or Cheetah. Thank you, Aromia Fleece, for that. Who are just sort of tragically monsters, tragic monsters,
Or
especially
made the
modern
wrong
Cheetah.
bargain. That's an interesting version of the monster.
The Faustian bargain.
Faustian.
Yeah, Cheetah, especially the new Cheetah in Wonder Woman, is just tragic.
Fascinating.
Just
Oh,
tragic.
Oh, that issue.
What's
the
her
Watch,
it's not Arden. Why am I thinking it's
Barbara
Arden?
Minerva.
Barbara Minerva.
Thank you.
Because you're going Minerva Athena.
Minerva. Yeah.
She makes one of my favorites very weird. She shows up in American Alien. If you read Superman American Alien, Barbara Minerva, before she's Cheetah, shows up at Clark Kent's 21st birthday, where he crashes Bruce Wayne's, and he ends up hooking up with Barbara Minerva. It's an amazing.
Oh my God.
They end
What
up-
is that in?
Yeah, they end up shagging in American
Superman
Alien.
American Alien, a miniseries.
It's like
yeah,
they
yeah.
have
I remember
they
that
have
one.
like
Yeah,
the best
yeah.
one night stand ever. It's and knowing who she becomes, it is so tragic. It just breaks your heart.
So I think that like a lot of the heroes and villains that we have today owe their existence to like the 50s sort of like monster comics and those horror comics, like Ghost Rider. I think comes out like
Oh, yeah.
like you talk about like a Faustian deal, like you can save your family, but now you're stuck with like the spirit of vengeance inside of you, and it
And he
burns your
comes from the
skin.
70s generation.
Yeah,
Yep.
and
He's
Comes
one
from
of
early
the-
a very
70s.
obnoxious motorcycle.
Yep. Johnny Blaze.
Blaze.
And
What
or
have you
Danny
done,
Ketch,
Johnny Blaze?
And or Alejandra, and or Robbie Reyes.
Robbie Reyes, who's I'm a really big fan of the new.
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
Robbie Reyes.
Oh man,
Ghost Rider.
the Marvel, what is it? Marvel Legacy? Not Legacy. It's no, it is Legacy. It just came out.
Legacy, yeah.
I was getting it confused with Generations, with Robbie Reyes. I was like, oh, we're doing that. That's awesome.
And now Spirits of Vengeance is officially a book again.
So cool. So let me ask you this: are the Morlocks monsters?
Ooh. You know,
The ones from the original, like, the Morlocks and Eloy, those are monsters.
Well, those
right?
are monsters, yeah. But like the X-Men, like, because some of them are or are they just like disfigured?
I would say I would not tend to classify them as monsters.
Yeah.
If a particular Morlock
Creature.
self-identifies as a monster, I'm not going to fight
it's a
it.
creature. Well, I think the difference between a creature and a monster is that creatures are. I mean, like it's a difficult call. I mean, again, it's less classification and more gravity of like.
You're talking Moloids or Morlocks?
Morlocks. Morlock is a creature, not a monster. Or they're not really
Morlock
creatures.
is just a
they're like-
person.
Oh well, I was thinking. Okay, to be fair, I was
'cause they're a
thinking of the
mutant.
original. They were mutants technically.
Yes.
So do we
Mutants are
class-
people.
No, I was thinking of the ones from the classic.
Morlocks and Eloy.
Yeah, Morlocks and
okay.
Eloy. Yeah,
yes,
thank you.
those monsters
Never
are
mind.
creatures.
Carry on. I went too far back.
So like they might have a monstrous appearance, but they're not necessarily monsters.
The Time Machine. I finally remember the name of the dang book.
Time
Sorry.
Machine.
I'm just
Issue
letting
L.
you being like the one with the thing.
The thing,
goes- that
and then
goes
there's a
in the
worm in
world.
it,
Moves through
and it
time?
moves.
Yeah.
It's a machine. It goes through time. That.
Never
So
heard of
that's
it.
actually, I'm so glad that came up because obviously comic books and monster storytelling and superheroes are all also drawing on this well of sort of like the well of semi-pulp fiction, adventure-y, sci-fi stuff that H.G. Wells and a lot of those progenitors, like in Jules Verne, that those folks laid out. Like going back to Mary Shelley, like the literary sources that lead to all of this 20th century comic book myth-making. Should be acknowledged. I don't know.
Mary Shelley. Oh God.
Thank you, Mary Shelley.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for everything you've done.
She came up with that story in a night.
It was.
She was like 19.
She was.
It's unfair.
She was drunk. Who was 19? They were in it, and then it was just. And
She's there with her husband?
You can imagine them sitting around a table and her just going, "Oh fuck y'all, hold on, the shit's going," just dropping, like finding a suit of armor to grab a gauntlet and just dropping it on the table.
Like she's like, oh, I'm married to one of the world's currently greatest poets. I'm gonna go write a story better than that guy.
I'm just gonna remind him where he
Yeah.
fucking sits.
Where's the absinthe? Great.
Excuse
With
me
rights.
while I outsell you for all time.
For all time. Here's one of the best stories ever written.
Boom.
F you.
There we go. Here's the he's like, I'm one of the world's leading literary lights, and she says, hold my absinthe.
Yeah.
Talking about making shirts, everybody.
Yeah. Hold my absinthe, maybe.
Amy, hold my
absinthe.
Oh my God, I love you.
That's
so
Frankenstein by
much.
Grant Morrison, a 4-issue run. Which is a really good love if you're a fan of Frankenstein stories.
Then
It's
we
right
finally
there.
made it back to Seven Soldiers, which is what you were talking about before I derailed us.
Oh,
I
yeah,
was, and I'll
yeah.
also say, and like
That was
there's
the thing we were gonna talk about
And there's
at one
books.
point.
The chat is going nuts about also, of course, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which is another classic
I
monster
didn't even
retelling.
And this is Alan Moore
Whoa.
in comics, drawing specifically on that literary history that we're talking about and all of these common sources. And I will say, like, every version of Mina Harker is dear to me.
Yes.
She's the best. Even in the original, she's the best. Like, more than I expected. When I finally sat down to read Bram Stoker's Dracula, I was like, I am prepared for the women to suck. And then Mina was like, just kidding, I'm amazing.
No, Mina, like,
What's up? I'm amazing.
Dracula is a fascinating novel to read, and
Yeah.
it's.
Thank you for the Seven Soldiers pick.
Oh, God, look at them.
All right, so before we get derailed again and while this picture's up, talk to us about that, Taliesin.
Well, I did. I already talked about Frankenstein.
okay.
That was the run he was talking about.
Yeah, and it's he's got the Bride of Frankenstein's got 4 arms and kills, and like they just are like, it's like classic. It's got a little bit of that Hellblazer horror vibe. It's really dark. It's really gothic. Frankenstein himself talks in this very beautiful, eloquent, sad tone and for everything he says. It's a fabulous rendition of the character that's a lot of fun. And it's high concept horror and really creepy. And like in the same way that and I'm trying to remember some of the monsters that they pull from for League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but it's basically a faux British government of the 19th century pulling together Mina Harker, who's
They're the literary all-stars.
Yeah.
It's sort of the idea
Jekyll
that if
and Hyde
those
and
books
Miss
had been
Woman.
written about real people and you needed to assemble a team of your absolute best, you would go out and get.
Yeah, and it's a great read if you're a fan of these characters, and if you're capable of. If you're okay going with, well, they're going to be leaning on a lot of 19th century literary tropes, which are definitely druggy, sexy, rapey, racist, but like they acknowledge it and it's sort of what it is. And if you're okay with that, I mean, like I do remember
The first couple Alan Moores are really delightful, and then at a certain point you're like, this again, but like,
and then it slowly
so many of them are
degrades
so good.
into a psychotropic nightmare, which I love. I'm a big fan of it, but I definitely. It's not for everybody, but it's a very if you're okay with someone getting killed by there's some violent stuff that happens in that book.
Huh?
I
Alan
need to
Moore.
reread
Alan
League of
Moore.
Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah, me too.
I definitely
Me
remember
too.
loving Volume 1, despite some violence of a sexual nature that I don't love.
Yeah, it's very much, but it is very much leaning on. It is trying to invoke a time, and it is a time that is definitely.
And he's such
I
a
give it-
nerd
I
for
give it the Game of
history, which I
Thrones.
love. It's just soaked in beautiful little details and like.
I give it a hint of the same sort of like that I give like Game of Thrones. I'm like, well, this is what we're doing, and it is.
Like I signed up for this world.
This is
This part
exactly
of it.
this is exactly what I signed up for. So
Granted,
oh boy.
it's part of it because they choose to have it be
Yeah,
part of it.
sure.
Because
I'll even go
those
so
are
far.
choices that these people
absolutely.
made.
I'll
It's
even go
just,
so far
you
as
know,
to
I
say
recommend it
it's
anyway.
actually a little easier. It's a little easier to justify in League than it is in Game of Thrones, just because they are going like penny dreadful, and yeah, it's a heavy book. I will go on the opposite, brighter end of things. Fing Fang Foom.
I was just about to say that.
What are the odds?
That is really weird. I was looking at my list here. I was like, oh yeah, we haven't talked
On a
about
lighter
Fin
note.
Fang Foom.
On a lighter note, Fin
Fin
Fang
Fang
Foom.
Fin Fang Foom.
Do we have a picture of Finn? Yes!
Okay,
yeah,
actually,
oh yeah, that's the best picture of Fin
no,
Fang.
it's not. No, that is not the best picture of
That's
Fin
one
Fang
of the first
Foom.
pictures of Fin Fang
That's the
Foom.
first picture. I think there's one called Fin Fang Foom Pants.
That is.
Because
that
Fin
is
Fang
good-
Foom
yeah.
is a dragon that wears pants,
Giant
despite
pants.
having, as has been commented, no genitalia.
I was about to request that one of you do for those of you who don't know, what's a Fin Fang Foom?
Fin Fang.
There we go.
There we go.
And if you can't read the text bubble because it's too small, it says, "My God, oh my God, it's wearing underpants." Next Wave.
Who's that? Oh, it's
That's
yeah.
Next Wave,
Warren
Agents
Ellis.
of Hate, issue 1.
Elsa Bloodstone. Monster Hunter.
Elsa Bloodstone, Monster Hunter, who is in Next Wave and 8. Oh, yeah. Who's
Okay,
She's
sorry,
also.
it's so much.
We're going to start with Fin Fang Foom and then move to
Okay,
Elsa
Fin Fang
Bloodstone
Foom.
because there's a
Fin
lot
Fang
to say.
Foom is an ancient dragon who's actually an alien, if I'm correct, and it
think so.
lives under the Great Wall of China, at least in.
His origin.
I wrote it down. Why am I forgetting? I hate when I
We
forget
are giving you the
things.
worst time. Like, you have a whole outline, and we're just like jumping to the 70s.
Now let's go
Meanwhile-
to the 60s. Let's go to the 90s.
Meanwhile, dragon in purple underpants.
Yeah. Oh my God. He's wearing
Oh
underpants.
man, I think he was Tales to Astonish like 80. No, Strange Tales 89. That's what it was.
Yeah, he's basically a big creepy dragon, and who was used to great effect in a book called Next Wave, Agents of Hate, which I'm sure
I
I've.
haven't read it, even though Stuart Immonen is the best and
It
Warren Ellis
is-
is the best, and it
It is
rehabilitated a bunch of my
both
favorite
of them
characters.
at the top of their game. It is a book. It was a book that was so good that when I was younger and it first came out and I was bored, I literally made like a dream voiceover cast for the never happening animated version of like putting together like who I would have like. And I remember this specifically because ironically, Liam O'Brien was my pick for Machine Man. Because he was in
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You see it?
Yep, I see it. I
Fin
will
Fang
hear
Foom.
it.
There are lines in this is a comedy book that is truly remarkable, which includes like, my God, he's wearing pants. He at one point grabs a character and says, "Fin Fang Foom puts you in his pants," and it's just boom, boomer, boom, boomer. The mutant is going, "No, he's gonna put me in his pants! Help!" It's
Oh
just-
my God.
Oh, it's amazing.
Was it Avengers? There was a comic from a couple years ago where they opened a box and it ended up being like a Fin Fang Foom pheromone.
Oh God.
I don't think I've read this one.
I might be remembering it incorrectly, but I feel like it was a Fin Fang Foom pheromone and
Say that 3 times fast.
Fin Fang Foom pheromone. Fin Fang Foom pheromone.
Fear the Fin Fang Foom pheromone.
That's hard.
But like they were like, what is this? It just smelled. I mean, there's nothing in this box. Why were we all so worried about it? And then all of a sudden, Fin Fang Foom was like, I smell sex or whatever. I don't know what. That's not what he said. But like he like awakens from his slumber and he's like in the
But he
bay
has no
next to the
genital-
New
well,
York.
Good prank. Good prank.
Yeah, good prank, good prank. And they have to send someone. It was all new Wolverine.
And they have to
that's
sing.
awesome.
They had to send Wolverine.
And they had to send her in, and I think that they
So
had
just
Old Man
recently.
Logan. It was like the last couple years. Maybe it wasn't Fin Fang Foom, but I think it was Fin Fang Foom.
Oh man.
I'm just enjoying saying Fin Fang Foom.
Yeah.
Chat, if I'm incorrect, please correct me, but I think it was Fin Fang Foom.
Amazing.
And I remember loving it and being like, oh yeah, I love all new Wolverine. This is great.
I mean, she is. She's
I mean, she is great.
She is
but,
great,
like,
but-
It was like, I have even more reason to love this book. Because that's insane.
Yeah, Fin Fang Foom is like of like the big and
And that's a classic Iron Man villain. Like
It
that
is.
was a big time classic Iron Man villain. for the
it was
first
a
10
big
years.
Iron Man villain, and the Next Wave, of course, Next Wave Agents of Hate, which had a really fascinating group of characters put together. I highly recommend it. It's a
My
great
favorite
read.
thing about that book from the outside, having not actually sat down with it yet, is that as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, it was never meant to be in continuity. It was like, oh,
No.
don't make me pay attention to stuff. I just want to write a fun version. But everyone loves it so much that they keep sneaking pieces of it
that
into
they've
continuity.
slowly sneaked pieces into continuity over the years. It's true. It was never supposed to be in continuity, but they've kind of back-channeled it, and like it is basically now how Machine Man is. The Machine Man that shows up in that book, who is really snarky, is now the official Machine Man. There's little, and like the redesign of Elsa Bloodstone, who we're about to get to, is definitely like the Elsa Bloodstone that is now running around the Marvel. There's actually, I think there's a Next Wave cover somewhere in the box of that's just them holding up. Say it was their Civil War cover, which is just them holding up protest signs that they're not part of the Civil War crossover, which is that Mark Miller licks goats.
Oh my goodness.
And
That's
there's
awesome.
Elsa is the only one not holding a sign because Elsa Bloodstone has better stuff to do
Yeah.
than
We don't care.
Yeah,
Please
don't
love
care.
us. Mark Miller Luke Scopes.
Well, speaking of
Which you probably thought was
Elsa,
hilarious.
Yeah.
I believe Elsa Bloodstone also featured in the Legion of Monsters revamp.
So yeah, monsters have had a big comeback in Marvel at the last couple years.
Yeah.
I just read there's a book. It's free on Comixology right now called Monsters Unleashed.
Yee.
Monsters Unleashed. And I'll say I've only read the first issue. And it is Elsa Bloodstone. Elsa Bloodstone is in the book. She's the there's actually in comic books. I'm trying to remember who the original Bloodstone was, but they were monster
Her
hunters.
dad?
Her dad, who
Yeah.
was
Her dad. Yeah, I can't remember his name
his
though.
first name
Mr.
is
Bloodstone.
Mr.
But they have like
Dr. Bloodstone.
that Bloodstone that I think it belonged to like Dracula or something like that, and it grants like powers if you have it or something like that.
It helps
yeah.
you fight
Monster,
they
yeah.
were vampire and werewolf hunters, the Bloodstones. The Bloodstone, and she is a
They're sort of like the Van
world-famous-
Helsings of the Marvel universe, essentially.
Yeah, they're serious, and like I remember his character design was a little iffy. He looked like a safari hunter with like an Iron Man ruby in his chest.
Yeah.
But so she's been running around killing monsters, and that's kind of her deal. And she's very British and very Laura Croft. Laura Croft. But Monsters Unleashed is about one of the big character of Monsters Unleashed is a kid named Kid Kaiju. This kid's name is Kid Kaiju, and when he draws monsters, they come to life.
That is awesome.
He's an Inhuman, right?
I believe he's an Inhuman. I think is where they. I'm not entirely sure because they don't really go into that very deep. But the stuff he's drawing is very Kirby, which I find fascinating. Is he's actually there, and these are the
Hey.
monsters that he's drawn that have now
that's-
become like his version, like very much like the Metal Men. He's kind of got all of these pals who are his
And look at
imaginary
the-
friends.
Look at the font on Monsters.
Yeah.
Chief, can you? Oh, that's such a great throwback. Oh.
It's a beautiful. The whole thing is designed to sort of homage the long history of monsters in comics and at Marvel specifically, but also I'd love to side by side that with like a famous Monsters of Filmland.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
the same. It's
Yeah.
the same creature featured.
Because like that Monsters font looks exactly like the 76 Legion of Monsters. Like I read that today, and it was like,
Tell us about Legion of Monsters.
so Legion of Monsters. So I don't miss anything. Is Morbius, Werewolf by Night, Ghost Rider, and Man Thing.
No Blade.
I don't think Blade was.
Oh,
I don't-
man.
I don't think Blade was in it.
There's a thing you'll notice with comics, which is that if a thing is big and exciting, within a couple years, somebody will be like, put all the things in the same thing.
Yeah.
So we talked about.
Put all the things in the thing.
Yeah, which when it's
Put all
why
these
are
small
we get
things in
our,
this
like,
big thing.
crossover mania. Like it's like Voltron, but for stories.
Yeah, but
That's true.
it's narrative Voltron.
It's Voltron's itself with other things. If,
All
like, if,
form the editor.
if all of the different giant robot enemies got together and formed a giant robot. Anyway, it's Voltron's all the way down.
Destructicons meet Voltron, and then they form Destructitron.
I'm now very distracted, but early 70s monster boom, they create all these characters, they're all doing well. You've got your Ghost Rider, you've got your Morbius, you've got your Werewolf by Night.
God,
And then
Morbius
somebody,
was-
of course, goes, oh my God, super team.
There's so many monsters. Let's
How do you
create a
handle
super team. So this alien-like thing from outer space called the Starseed comes down, and it's actually like this. I'm trying to remember. It was this morning, and there's been a lot of coffee and
There was
little food.
coffee and
The 70s
Starseed.
were a time of space and monsters.
Yeah, they really were. 'Cause,
Yeah.
like that's where like Doctor Strange really kind of gets his
Doctor
thing.
Strange,
and
all
like,
the Starling cosmic stuff comes in the late 70s.
all the weird cosmic stuff.
Early 70s?
Early 70s is like the Marvel premiere, like Lovecraftian stuff that I didn't even think about putting that on the list. Like the Marvel premiere, my favorite Doctor Strange stuff, it's all Lovecraftian. Oh my God. Oy vey, I'm an idiot. Put that on a shirt. Matt Key's
Do
an
not
idiot.
put oy vey, I'm an idiot.
Yeah, put Matt
Copyright
Key's
Matt
an
Key.
idiot on a shirt. Matt Key was not right. Matt Key's an idiot.
I'm not putting that on a shirt. Rob me of the joy of saying it out loud? No.
You just point to your shirt
Not
like,
doing that.
Matt,
It's gonna give me a wrist cramp. Absolutely not.
We're just going to make sure to say I'm with stupid and they point up.
Matt Key
so
needs
we
a
can all
third
wear
cup
them.
of coffee. He does. Matt Key does need a third cup of
Yeah.
coffee.
The Legion of Monsters was an early team up that sort of showed off all those 70s guys.
Yeah. So, and they only, I think it was only like 1 or 2 issues. It didn't go for long. It was like, here's Legion of Monsters, and it's great. But then, what's that?
You're not wrong.
Yeah! Yeah, that's awesome.
Gorgeous.
Look at that.
Look at that.
But that's a modern Legion of Monsters.
That's a
cover.
modern Legion of Monsters. Yeah, that's the 2010 Legion of Monsters.
I hate that I can just be like, look at that Marvel Limited series up there. That's definitely from the, like,
We know our comics. I mean, we read a lot of them.
pieces. Always more to
pieces.
know.
But the new Legion of Monsters has Elsa Bloodstone in it, and I think she ends up leading the team. And I think it's only like 6 issues or 12 issues. I can't remember, but let's see here. That was Morbius, Werewolf by Night, Man Thing.
Gotta have a man thing.
They gotta have a Man Thing, but they also have Encantu the Living Mummy.
Woo!
And quite possibly the best named monster of all time,
Oh no.
That's a lot of pressure. We've already had Orgo.
Manphibian.
Wow.
Manphibian.
Manphibian.
Manphibian is Marvel's answer to Creature from the Black Lagoon. Turns out, alien.
Okay.
Manphibian is an alien
Yeah.
who came to Earth 1,000 years ago chasing another Manphibian who killed the love of his life, and 1,000 years later finally gets revenge, but he's like, I'm stuck on this planet, may as well avenge it
Aww.
with the Legion of Monsters.
Aww.
Is he man or is he Phibian or is he both?
Or is he both? Manphibian.
Phibian.
He is both.
Man dash Phibian. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I love it.
So Manphibian.
I love this.
Yeah, I think it's a 12-issue run. They fight like Red Hulk and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun. But then I think that gave way to the Howling Commandos, written by
S.H.I.E.L.D.
of S.H.I.E.L.D.,
Yeah.
written by Frank Barbiere or Frank
Howling
Barbiere.
Commandos are a long and complicated
Look at that
story.
Okay,
Here's
the
Manphibian.
original.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's right. Dracula's in it and Frankenstein was in it, of course, because of course.
Now, this Legion of Monsters is from the Epic line, right?
Yeah.
Is that what's up in the corner there? This is an interesting, we haven't gotten into there, but that's like what, early 80s, maybe late 70s, when
Late 70s.
Marvel is, remember our direct market episode where we were talking about how they were able to try different things once comic shops started being a thing, you could sort of do riskier material. And some of this market was cultivated by magazines like Creepy and Eerie. Warren Publishing put them out, along with Vampirella and some other sort of boundary pushing. What does that say?
Curtis.
Curtis Comics.
Curtis Magazine Publishing. Because I think this was a magazine and not a comic. I may
right.
be
It
wrong.
looks
It was black and white.
The 70s and 80s saw a boom in black and white magazine comic book storytelling, basically graphic storytelling in magazine form. Magazines were not subject to the code restrictions. So even as regular comics were having a flowering of horror and monsters and other things in the 70s, magazines like Creepy Eerie and apparently Marvel must have struck a deal with Curtis Publishing? I'm so confused.
So I know in the 70s when Lynn Wein and Marv Wolfman were brought in as editors, Lynn Wein was given the color line and Marv Wolfman was given the black and white line. And I think
If
the
he
black and
oversaw
white
a flowering
line.
of monsters and his name was Marv Wolfman, I call shenanigans, comics. I call shenanigans on
Tales
Marv
of
Wolfman.
Shenanigans. Our new.
His name is too good.
It's too good to be doing a Legion of Monsters book.
Yeah. What the heck? Okay, continue.
But yeah, I know
want my
that they
first issue of
split
Tales
up
of Shenanigans.
that because they were just starting the black and white magazine line at that time, and that would have also been Satana. I think like Marvel Preview or Star-Lord came out. That was in that line. So that would
I
have
get
been.
Preview and Premiere confused a lot.
Me too, but I think Preview was the bigger magazine
Okay.
format. That coincidentally is how Mad Magazine was able to get away from the code.
That's why they became a magazine.
Is because they were originally a comic book. For like the first 7 or 8 issues, they were a comic
23.
book. 23?
22 or 23.
Wow.
We have them at the shop, sorry. I
you
got
really?
so fascinated
I
the
love
day
you
we
so
bought a
much.
collection of Mad, and it was
You are
like
the
comic,
greatest
comic,
thing
comic, comic,
ever.
comic, comic, magazine. And it
Yeah.
was like, the moment, it's right here.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah, when Bill Gaines was like, you know what? Fuck you guys.
Screw this, I'm out.
Screw this, I'm out.
We
I'm
will
just gonna
come
do
back
a
to Bill
magazine.
Gaines.
Hand me a microphone.
We will come
Yeah.
back to Bill Gaines.
Yeah, Bill Gaines is gonna be a big name at some point in one of these
man.
shows. It's for a future episode.
I have to
As-
show
as we-
you a picture of, I have a framed thing of the EC bullpen that I love it. Okay.
It's the great.
Yeah, comics.
Comics. I want that shirt. Bill
Sal,
Gaines was
keep
right.
us
I
back
want
on.
that
Oh yeah,
shirt.
well, like here's one from Rasnek Khan, who over at Alpha, I believe. Both Marvel and DC have their own versions of Dracula. Which one is better?
Ooh.
I have my personal preference.
I want to hear your preference.
I like Marvel Dracula better.
I'm not familiar with the DC Dracula.
Yeah, tell me if the DC Dracula.
Well,
Because I'm trying to. I know DC's Frankenstein.
I know Marvel's Dracula almost killed Doctor Strange in the Montesi formula with that whole thing with the Montesi. Like, he legitimately almost killed Doctor Strange. Like Doctor Strange was dead. The only reason he didn't die was because at the very last second before Dracula killed him, he like released his astral form and then had to like spend 2 issues trying to get back to his body.
See, I was trying to find like a favorite DC Dracula story that I could like latch onto, and I got to admit I couldn't find one. I couldn't find one that really hit me, but I do have a favorite Marvel Dracula story.
Okay.
The only Dracula that I have had anything with is the Doctor Strange stuff, and then
There was an X-Men run.
there was an X-Men
Because Jubilee's a vampire
an
now.
Yeah.
That is a relatively recent
That's relatively recent.
revisiting
It's
of
like
the classic
2010,
X-Men vampire
2011.
stuff.
So-
but there's a cover with Storm's encounter with Dracula.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a very famous part of X-Men history.
Oh yeah, that was a big thing. And then my favorite was a post-Civil War story, which was Captain Britain and the M13, which was Dracula makes a deal with Doctor Doom on the moon.
Like you do.
Like you do. Dracula basically builds a city on the moon so that he can go down and take over England and create a vampire country that is ruled by him. And will
Sure.
just be, and like Dracula is evil and messed up and murdering people to the point where even Doctor Doom's like, you're violent and a little racist and kind of old and it's creepy and I'm just gonna get out of this. Like, even Doctor Doom is like, you're awful.
You're a
I
terrible
don't really
person."
like you. You're just terrible. And Dracula builds giant spaceships and attacks England from the moon, literally dropping vampires like missiles onto the city of London. And Captain Britain and
M13.
Blade.
So I was going to say, here's
Perfect,
a nice argument for loving Marvel's Dracula is that his success in getting his own book called Tomb of Dracula on issue 10, I think.
Oh, God.
Around issue 10.
say,
I think the
sounds
origin's
right.
in 13, but maybe the first appearance is 10.
You're talking about Blade now, yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah.
gave us Blade,
Blade.
who then inadvertently gave us like the modern superhero movie.
Movie.
Oh, yeah.
golden age.
A
So,
great-
When was that
and-
first
and-
one? 95? 94? 96?
And I've
98?
got to say that,
Ish?
that
I don't know.
that Blade in the M13 books, Blade working for the British government as an anti-monster fighter is one of my favorite iterations of the character ever.
For those of you who don't know, who's Blade?
Blade is a character from Marvel Comics who's kind of he's like almost a vampire. Like there was like a weird circumstance.
Like a half vampire, right?
He's
Or
like a
something
half
like that? Yeah.
vampire, and he is actually a professional vampire hunter and has been going around trying. And they almost several times in Marvel Comics history, they have almost exterminated all of the vampires off Earth. They've come very, very close to getting rid of all of them.
That was the Montesi formula, where like the only way for like
was a
Doctor
big
Strange
thing.
to fully heal himself was to activate the Montesi formula, and the Montesi formula, when enacted, destroyed every vampire on Earth.
Yeah, there was like only 3 left, and they were like, you managed to like save a
Yeah.
couple of the good ones.
Yeah.
And there were a couple good vampires, and one of them, I believe, is Spitfire the name of the superhero?
Oh, I forgot she's a, yeah.
So Spitfire, who was a World War II superhero from England, who's a speedster,
Yeah.
is still alive in the Marvel universe because
cover.
she's also a vampire.
Yeah.
So she is a super fast vampire, and she and
Oh,
Blade
that's
start dating, and
awesome.
it's adorable.
I did
and
not
part
know
of it is
any of this.
you're in England now. Why don't you chill off, take off the dark sunglasses, and just have a beer like a normal person? And him just doing like, yeah, I hang out with too many superheroes. They're making me like really intense. Oh God! And just like having the more chilled out Blade is one of my favorites.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, it's a great book.
Also, Tomb of Dracula gave us Hannibal King,
Hannibal King.
who's essentially like Blade, but more of a private eye.
There's
He's like a film noir vampire.
I don't even know
hunter.
Hannibal King. This sounds exciting.
Oh no, he's not in a lot, but he's again like a doctor. He was in a few Doctor Strange. I can't remember if it was like from the late 70s or if it was the Peter Gillis run. I can't.
I do want
I'm
to.
getting
I
them
saw
all
a
mixed
great
up, but
question over there. Speaking of on the DC side, shout out to Etrigan the Demon.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow! Actually, I should read our.
Kirby
where was
using
it?
his tremendous creative powers yet again.
I came
created-
for Chaz. Actually, said, "Don't worry, I won't ask again. But what do you think of Etrigan?"
I'm not
Because he's
familiar
now
with.
a rhyming demon.
Yeah, no.
I'm not familiar with Etrigan. I need you
So
guys to
Etrigan-
educate-
Etrigan, my
I know
favorite-
I could pick him out of a lineup and be like, that's Etrigan, but I don't
So,
know his story.
My favorite sort of story with Etrigan would be the original miniseries for the Books of Magic,
Okay.
which is kind of a
I haven't read Books of
That's the
Magic.
new
I'm gonna go.
Etrigan is in those?
Yeah, well, one of the Books of Magic is basically DC's version of Harry Potter that was weirdly written before Harry Potter.
Yeah.
It was like it's a
The
young
kid
boy
even has like
who's-
the round glasses.
Yeah, he's a little British kid with an owl and glasses. Coincidence, and I swear it is a coincidence. It is an archetype.
Yeah.
Who is going to be the next great magician on Earth? And so
Right.
the greatest magicians who exist is like John Constantine, this Phantom Stranger.
Is it
Zatanna. A bunch of them get together and decide they're going to give him an introduction to magic. And one of the things they do is they go, I think it's the Phantom Stranger takes him back in time where he meets Jason Blood, back when Jason Blood was working as an assistant for Merlin before he became Etrigan the Demon, and like going like this is somebody who made a terrible mistake and got fused with a demon. And
The classic line is, gone, the form of man. Arise, the demon Etrigan.
who is a demon who's kind of he's kind of a troll demon. His thing is
Yeah.
he's not really for anybody, but he's against everyone. And he's there to just kind of make even other demons' lives kind of miserable.
He's a little puckish.
He's very puckish. He's
Yeah.
a demonic puck.
So
And he rhymes.
He's
Everything he
wicked more
says in
than evil.
rhyme.
Yeah.
Is he
Which was a
good?
later edition, but a great one.
Yeah, and it's actually they've established it in the DC is like weirdly has a very specifically complex hell that they've built, and one of the things is there is a rank of demon that always rhymes, and it's considered fashionable to take an oath of rhyming like an oath of silence. And so there's a whole series of them. It's like you never stop rhyming because then you've lost your rank. But it's like a fashion statement to only speak in rhyme.
oh my
It's
God,
nuts.
that's amazing.
Oh man, they built a good.
Oh,
they built a.
love
I
that.
love the hell.
That was
DC's
over in the
hell.
Vertigo years, yeah?
Yeah, that's
Back
very Vertigo.
when they did, so you'll remember from previous episodes that there were a set of DC characters that sort of got developed and spun off and became the Vertigo universe, which then sort of graduated to being creator-owned and self-contained things, and some of those characters ended up subsumed back into DC, which is the point at which a bunch of those Magic characters became Justice League Dark,
Yeah.
and went forward from there. Constantine came back into the fold as a DC character.
Etrigan was also in Demon Knights. Another.
Yep, Etrigan was in Demon Knights, which we
Cornell
talked
book.
about on a previous thing, which was like a flashback medieval series.
Yeah, Sword and Sorcery Justice League, basically.
Written by Paul Cornell, same person who did Captain Britain,
Captain Britain and
MI13.
M13.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
A lot of people's interests crossing
I
there.
love you guys so much. I've said it before, and I will say it for the entire run of this show. I am the luckiest Wednesday Club fan of all time that I
We're
get
all
to
the
sit and just be
luckiest.
like,
Everything is ridiculous. This is
is
a real
amazing.
job.
I get to sit next to you guys and be like, educate me.
We're all here
Teach
doing
me.
that. And chat, educate us, because I know we're missing good stuff.
Well,
But so Etrigan though, like good, bad, hero, villain, anti-hero.
I think
little bit of both, like a Loki
Puck is really
character.
like you nailed it with the Puck comment. He's a mischief maker. He's a little bit of he's freakazoid. He's just sort of there to foil whatever's happening, whether it be good or bad.
He is a curse that Jason is sort of dealing with, essentially, but he most often ends up like on the side of good.
Jason is sort of his human host who gets to hold him in until he has to like let him loose upon the earth. And Jason is like a weird immortal who made this demonic pact, and it gave him a fancy streak of white hair in his otherwise red mane of wonderful hair, and yeah, everything goes horribly wrong.
So let me ask you this: are monsters? Because the monsters that we've all talked about really aren't scary.
Some of them are scary. I mean, like they're scary. It's
Right?
interesting.
I mean, like what monsters that we've talked about are like because Werewolf by Night, he's a hero. He's not.
he's
not scary.
And the chat
He
room
does
has brought this
accidentally
up.
murder a bunch of people in his early appearances, which
Sure.
I learned early today reading those appearances.
There's been a lot of talk in the chat about like what constitutes a monster and whether like monsters are scary. And like a lot of the monsters we're talking about are protagonists. And when you have a protagonist monster, it's really more about being a misunderstood monster, about people being afraid of you, but you actually having something to contribute to the world anyway.
So what? So like, what can we say about like the sort of like literary themes or metaphors that we find in those? Like, is
And
it
we
like?
can say that the three of us are very drawn to sympathetic monsters, which is probably coloring our
It
report.
does,
psyche,
and
yeah.
I think the big thing about what constitute a monster, and I've been thinking a lot about this, is people's reaction to the character. And I think if people have if the people in the story have a visceral reaction towards them of horror or disgust, that is normally what I would constitute a monster, as opposed to just an alien or a superhero. Is no one looks at Captain America and goes like, ah, but like people look at someone like Clayface and go, ah.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's it's that, or someone like Thing, who's
The
of the
ever-loving
fan, the
blue-eyed
ever-loving
Thing?
blue-eyed Thing of just.
Yeah, Aunt Petunia's favorite nephew.
Whoa,
yeah.
God, what is that? Yeah, is very much, that's what I think constitutes a monstrous character, is just the initial reaction of a bystander in those stories.
Yeah,
And I do.
No, go ahead, please.
At some point, I just want an interesting thing that I strongly love about the current age of comics is that we are getting some sort of overdue catch-up in the area of essentially letting women be monstrous in this more nuanced, sympathetic way. Now, the idea of women who are demonic or scary, obviously you get a lot of that, but a lot of those earlier models tend to be women as representatives of the fears of men. And you don't get as many of the sort of Benjamin Grimm style, like, who am I, what does this mean to me to be perceived in this way, which is, of course, really wonderful, fertile territory. So you get books, interestingly, like Noelle Stevenson's Nimona, which is dedicated to all the monster girls.
Still have to read that.
Which you're both going to flip over. I'm calling it. You're going to love it.
Well, no, you keep going because I got one afterward, but.
And then these two, which I just brought that I was going to show off. I'm just starting this one, which is interesting. It's called She-Wolf. It was a recommendation from a friend at the shop. I think Whitney may have also been plugging this one. She was enjoying this one before I jumped on board. Rich Tommaso writes and draws this one. I've only begun it. It's very sort of like, I'm really enjoying it because the art is just stunning. Let me make sure this is okay to see.
Make sure there's nothing. Oh, that's a great. Well, yeah, I can see why not, but that first image is great.
Dang it. Terms of service, terms of service.
Terms of service, terms of service. There we go.
Okay, so here's some sample pages from Rich Tommaso's She-Wolf, which is about
color is just beautiful.
Like, there's an interesting little boom of teenage werewolves right now, and this one.
They're kind of the new vampire.
I'll also say that
I'm
like
going to be reading this all October. I'm this far through it. I'm using a Wednesday Club sticker as a bookmark.
Nice. Nice.
This book is my official October recommendation. I am blown away. I am
Show some of the art from
flabbergasted
that.
by the.
It is beautiful.
Like
You figured
Yeah,
that you
you
were
were-
learning
It was
about that at
published this
Alternative
year.
Press, right?
Yeah, this was won a bunch of prizes at the Small Press Expo. This book, which was published this year, written and drawn by Emile Ferris, it's her first graphic novel, which is just ridiculous because she's so good. It is the
amazing.
journal of a teenage werewolf girl in the 60s. But the artistic range in this book is astonishing. Let me just look for
I'm going to
terms
say
of
there
service
was
problems.
a
Okay,
yeah,
because there's going to be a lot of those. It's everything from incredible realism to let's see.
And
There's
it's all done with pencils. Like it's.
it's all
my
done
God.
in the way that it might be in her own like.
I need to
She
own
goes to an
this.
art museum here because her brother is teaching her how
at
to
that.
find patterns and things, but she can do the most cartoonish and the most. It's a murder mystery. I'm selling it very badly, but you need
No,
to read
you're
this
not.
book.
So I'm a fan of werewolf stories, and there was an interesting thing that happened to werewolf stories a decade and a half ago. Same way that as many people know that we've gone through many iterations of zombie, where the notion of what zombies are and what they represent has shifted over the years, where people will make a statement and it will kind of shift the way people perceive these creatures. Werewolves got a big shift about a decade and a half ago, maybe 2 decades now. I'm so old. With a movie called Ginger Snaps, which, if you're a fan of the werewolf genre, or if you're interested in the notion of mapping the werewolf myth onto as a monster, as a representation of a young girl's coming of age story, which works really fucking well. Ginger Snaps was the first real usage of that as a functioning metaphor I love the Ginger Snaps movies. If you're in for teen girl werewolves, which is it's the most brilliant mashup ever.
I need you to read that Swamp Thing one shot before
I'm
next
so
time. So
into
we
it.
can
I know
discuss.
exactly. I'm really looking forward to that book. I was also gonna point out that since we haven't really touched a lot on Japanese manga, which has a rich
Oh my gosh, so many
and
monsters.
heavy and
Including a book
wonderful.
called
Every once in a
Monster
while-
that everybody says is really good, but which
Monster's
is
quite
about
good.
a crazy
not-
doctor, right?
I'm actually Monster is actually about a serial killer. Not
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
nothing.
Speaking of
it's a
things
great
that
it's a
are
great
scary.
book, and it's a really scary book. But I was going to recommend something that's almost impossible to find, and I really apologize for the fact that you may have to. I don't know how you
were
can
telling
even
me about
find
this
this
earlier.
book, which is Rumiko Takahashi, who is one of the greatest living comic book
Goddess.
creators on planet Earth. And she's created what she's mostly known for in the United States is Inuyasha, but before that, she had one of the longest-running animated and manga series, Urusei Yatsura, Ranma 1/2. She's done a bunch. Mason Ikoku, which is just woof. Had a live-action movie made out of it, and I mean, like,
Still need to watch them.
It's
You
so
told me
good.
about it. Fred told me about it.
She did. Oh no, I once bought it on VHS drunkenly in Tokyo one night. I was like, it's only 300 yen, mine. But she did a series called Rumik World, which was a collection of a lot of her just one-shot short stories, and a bunch of them were her. She did a whole bunch of horror stories, and she writes really good horror. Mermaid Scar, and she did a whole bunch of like dark mermaid tales, which are quite good. Mermaid Scar, Laughing Target, which is a time travel. One of them was called The Laughing Target, which is a very traditional Japanese monster, which is a hungry ghost, which are these sort of, and it's this girl. It's a very fascinating female monster. We're talking about female monsters, and she creates this girl who's kind of befriends these spirits that eat flesh and kind of becomes their friend, and they help her get what she wants, and in return she keeps feeding them. And it's there it is. There's the cover of the Viz English release. Wow. There was an English release. It was a long time ago. Rumiko Takahashi, this is her at her fucking best. This is Takahashi showing you what scary looks like, creating dynamic, powerful, like really beautiful art, wonderful female characters. She also is really good at drawing people firing bows for some reason. She's got a very, very, it's just a lot, and it's a beautiful, really short, 20 pages. If you can find it, I don't know where you can find it, but if you happen to find Laughing Target, it's from the Rumik World collection. It is, I mean, like, it is, for me, one of the best Japanese horror comics I've ever read. From one of the greatest living comic book creators on earth, who's...
Without a doubt.
Yeah, who's just... Oh.
And then, of course, you get lots of explorations of traditional Japanese sort of folklore in that thing we were talking about earlier, the definition of monster, where it is like a Norse troll and a fairy and a vampire. Like, what are the borders there in terms of what kind of things we're talking about? So you get folks like Shigeru Mizuki, who does all of the Kitaro, the little boy with one eye, like tons
Gekeke no Kitaro.
Yeah.
Gekeke no Kitaro, which is amazing. That is an
and they're all
amazing
coming
book.
back into print in English right now, including some that never got translated, but just decades of stories featuring like creatures from the Japanese countryside.
I'm definitely gonna have to cover Kitaro. Man, that's been so long. I love that book so much.
We'll do a
we'll do
Mizuki
it.
deep dive at some point. And then like straight up horror like Uzumaki. I forget who did Junji Ito, who's considered just one of the like scariest
Or like
comics
the
creators.
body horror creatures from Parasite, or I mean like whether or not you consider the demon from like Death Note as kind of a monster. It's definitely a monster character. I mean there's a rich history for horror.
Monsters.
Speaking of rich history, a current comic that's out from Boom is called Destroyer, and it takes as a premise that Frankenstein's monster actually exists, and at the end of that book, spoilers for an incredibly old classic novel, the monster ends up in Antarctica. So at the beginning of this book takes place in the present day.
The Arctic, right?
And is it the Arctic? Maybe it's the Arctic, yeah. And there's the monster is just sitting there, like on an ice throne, and just like, yep, here's the world, like just chilling, sees a whale, and it's like, I'm gonna go pet that whale. Like, and the monster never talks, dives into the water as it's killed by a whaling boat. And the monster's like, oh, fuck you guys. And he destroys the whaling boat, gets back to land, and now he's back on like civilization. He's come back to present day civilization.
Awesome.
Comes to America, where one of Victor von Frankenstein's granddaughters, or like great-granddaughter, relative, it has learned how to reanimate her dead son. And that's where the story picks up. And it's from Boom, and it's really good. It's really, really good.
Do we have a favorite zombie comic? People are asking about zombie comics.
I'm not a zombie guy.
I have one zombie comic, but I was curious.
I mean, Walking Dead is great.
you know,
So that was an interesting, this is a cool thing for like the comics landscape as a whole, took a rather sharp turn just over 10 years ago when, you know, like horror comics were not an especially, like, the Vertigo boom was going, but, like, people didn't feel like that was generally a safe genre. And certainly to launch, like, Image was known at that time more for things like The Darkness and Spawn and other, like, 90s hits. When they took a chance on this weird black and white comic that was supposed to be about the borderline existential horror of, like, fighting an unbeatable bunch of zombies, and it became the biggest thing to ever happen, which I still kind of can't believe.
No, it doesn't seem real, does it?
Doesn't seem
It's just-
right, yeah.
It just sort of happened, though, didn't it?
170 issues later, we're here.
Oh, my God.
They just had like 171 or 172. It's an absolute juggernaut. And the truth is that especially those early issues, I saw things I'd never seen in a zombie story. It was fantastic.
It was an interesting,
incredibly readable storytelling.
and it was a new take on zombie. I mean, like it was somebody getting away from the notion of like a metaphor for commercialism, which I thought was interesting.
And that came after the sort of Simon Garf is the zombie in Marvel. And there had been, like, Kirkman had even done, before he did Walking Dead, he did a book called Marvel Zombies, which was
Marvel Zombies was a really interesting thing.
And what's interesting about that, I didn't know this until today. It started in Ultimate Fantastic Four.
Did it start in Ultimate Fantastic Four?
I did a little research today.
Was that the first
That
use?
was the first appearance of the Marvel Zombies. Was in Ultimate Fantastic Four.
So
number 21.
So how this story worked is the Ultimate Fantastic Four based Fantastic Four, but younger and hipper, basically.
Remember, we've talked a bit about the Ultimate Universe. It was an attempt in the early 2000s to sort of free Marvel from the burden of continuity by just starting everything over in a new universe.
So-
the big hit that came out of it that is still resonating is Ultimate Spider-Man, which gave us Miles Morales, who's now in the regular universe. The whole universe was put to bed basically in 2015, but in the meantime, a whole bunch of stuff happened.
So the cool thing that they did in that, which was that version, the young version of the Fantastic Four, built a dimensional doorway the same way that the normal Fantastic Four do. And they built a dimensional doorway, and on the other side was our universe, was the real Fantastic Four. And it was like, oh my God, we're going to have an Ultimates and normal Fantastic Four crossover. And then they kind of got over there and realized, no, they had been tricked. It was just it was a universe where everyone had become zombies and they just needed new meat.
Yep.
And so that Fantastic Four had made contact with the Ultimate Universe to eat our planet. And it was a dark, heavy, it was really an intense story. And like the only superhero surviving that they had at that point, if I recall, was Magneto. It was just Magneto and like 35 humans. And they're like, this is not weird. He's like, there's no mutants anymore. There's just 30 of us. This is it. That shit's over.
And I thought they made really good use of the Marvel Zombies universe in Hickman's Secret Wars, where the Marvel Zombies was the biggest threat to the entire Secret War world, like of all of Battle
This was
World.
the 2015 story where it was a million different versions of the Marvel Universe sort of mushed together on this giant patchwork like world. Where it was like,
continent,
a big Pangean continent, and there was an area that was just sort of lost because that's where the zombies
It was
were.
Ultron robots and zombies. It was all that was outside the known universe was Ultron robots and zombies.
And they were constantly threatening the survival of that world, so they had like a wall around it, and they had guards on that wall.
It was such a
and
good-
it was like it was very similar to Game of Thrones, where it's like it was not an honor to be on the wall.
No.
Like it was not a fun duty to be on the wall.
You were sent
like,
there if you had really messed up.
if you would really upset God Doom, like that's where you were sent. And they were there we go. And they were one of the biggest threats to the entire universe. And finally they broke through, and they had a giant battle in the end with all the zombies. But it was like all of our favorite Marvel heroes and villains versus a shit ton of Marvel zombies.
Yep.
And they all have their powers still.
There's also an additional layer of humor to the title Marvel Zombies because it is a traditional affectionate fan name for people who
Marvel fans.
choose Team Marvel.
Yeah.
You're a Marvel zombie.
I'm a
Which
Marvel
was kinda
zombie.
cute. Yeah, I liked it. I'm a fan of the book iZombie, actually.
That was really fun.
iZombie was a lot of fun. There was a were-chihuahua. Do you remember that she was kind of sort of like having an on and off flirtation with the man that on a full moon turned into a chihuahua?
So iZombie, which of course became the source material it started as a Vertigo book, its own universe, and it became the source material for the CW show. But it comes in a tradition of, like, there had been a DC book called I, Vampire.
I, Vampire.
And interestingly, I just learned today that Werewolf by Night was originally pitched as kind of I,
werewolf.
Werewolf.
Really?
Yeah.
Because it was inspired. Roy Thomas got the idea from like Stan was like, make a book about a werewolf, and he was thinking of I Was a Teenage Werewolf.
Yeah.
And so, but Stan liked the title Werewolf by Night, and then that became.
Which another interesting TV connection, which is of course the Darkhold is how they created. It was like a big plot point of Werewolf by Night, which is the book that shows up in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as like the source of all evil. It's
Well,
also
the Darkhold actually
Darkhold.
has a giant
it's a
history.
huge. It is the Necronomicon of
It's
the
the
Marvel
Necronomicon
universe.
of the Marvel Universe, and one of my favorite teams of all time is the Darkhold Redeemers. Even though they barely ever showed up when I was a kid,
Did they redeem?
I was all about the Darkhold Redeemers, and I cannot. It is impossible to find copies of that. Like it's so hard.
No,
Every convention I go to, I'm like,
They're out there with
Redeemers
Runic World
or-
issues, yeah, and
You know, and they're
Viz
like-
issues of Odyssey.
Late 80s, early 90s. Nobody can afford
Siege
to
of Darkness,
stock
Midnight Suns.
those.
Yeah, it's just like no one
haven't
has
gotten
it.
expensive yet.
Yeah, there's like they're 50 cents if you find them, but you just can't find them because everyone wants to hold on to them because they're so good.
It's a conundrum.
That's
man.
actually not true.
That's
It's
not
not
true.
true.
But yeah.
It's really not good at all.
No,
but like, as a kid, I
iZombie
loved
is a
it.
really fun. Is a really fun read. It's very poppy and fun.
Chris Roberson and Mike Allred, I
Yeah,
believe?
Mike Allred. It's good. It's got a and like she has to keep eating brains or she gets a little weird. It's a fun story.
That might be my favorite zombie book, actually.
Yeah, that might be. I think
It's quite
mine.
different from the show, but it has a lot of the virtues that lead to the show.
Ah, there we go. The
Sarah
Darkhold
Cooper, the
Redeemers. The Bloodstones were
Kill
involved in all
now,
of that.
ask questions later. Sorry.
But the Darkhold it's also called the Book of Sin, and it's like the blackest magic in the Marvel universe. And the book, the pages get ripped and disseminated amongst all of humanity. And if even one spell gets out and a human reads it, like it's bad
Everything
news. So
goes.
the Redeemers have to go find all the pages and put the book
Damien
back together.
Hellstorm has to
I'm
go
just
in and
gonna
like take care of business.
Oh, we haven't even talked about the Son
I know,
of Satan.
and we have to and like poor Son of Satan, Damien Hellstorm, who's had the worst costumes of anybody.
Yeah, he really has.
I'm going to take a minor diversion just because I was looking at this today and it bugged me.
Okay, because we have to do our 15 minutes in
we
a second,
do.
but sure.
Or
So
5 minutes.
Werewolf by
5
Night,
minutes.
which I was looking at as one of the like
Jack Russell.
Jack Russell.
Jack
Werewolf
Russell.
by Night, amazing. They really went with that name. Which it turns out it was like his stepfather's name too, and so like anyway, they could easily have given him any other name but adorable Jack Russell. But I'm glad they didn't, because comics. So he was created in like Marvel Spotlight #2 or something like that, one of those tryout books.
Yeah, it was a tryout book.
And I was looking this up because I had read that the story behind him was that Stan was like, well, we're moving away from the anthology stuff, so like, what about a book about a werewolf?
Yeah.
And they, so Roy Thomas had an idea and then didn't write the first issue. The first issue was written by Jerry Conway and drawn by Mike Ploog.
Jerry Conway, who you might remember, killed Gwen Stacy.
Yeah.
That's how I remember. Like anytime I hear Conway, I'm like, you killed Gwen Stacy.
I believe he
Gwen,
actually sort of
bastard.
like leads with that now. He's like, I've accepted it. I'm the man who killed
I'm the
Gwen
man who
Stacy.
killed Gwen
Put
Stacy.
that on a
yeah.
business card.
But so it was written by Jerry Conway, drawn by Mike Ploog, and idea by Roy Thomas. But I didn't realize until looking at that first appearance today, plotted by Roy Thomas and Jean Thomas, Roy Thomas's wife.
Oh.
Also wrote Night Nurse, created that
Oh,
book
shit,
and
that's right.
character. And I just find it weird because Wikipedia does not reflect her as one of the co-creators.
Really?
Even though she co-plotted that first issue with him. So I'm just saying, Roy Thomas, Jean Thomas, Mike Ploog, and Jerry Conway on that first appearance.
Werewolf
It's
by
always
Night.
tricky to decide who co-created something, but considering that the first appearance is like his entire origin,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm putting it out in the universe. Jean Thomas. Thank you.
While we're back on the subject of Werewolf by Night, I think we should mention Wolfsbane.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite Wolfsbane stories was in the most recent X Factor run when
So
they were
she's
like the
a
Private
mutant
Eyes.
that you might remember from previous
Sorry, yes.
episodes.
For those of you who don't know, Wolfsbane is Ronnie. Is it Ronnie or
Rain.
Rainey?
It's Rain, but I've always said
Rain.
Ronnie.
Yeah,
Rain Sinclair.
Rain Sinclair.
Rain Sinclair.
Catholic from the New Mutants, Catholic
Orphaned.
girl.
Scottish.
Who hates her ability despite the fact that she's able to use it for good. She's
Werewolf.
terrified by the monster inside because of her original sin and Catholic guilt.
Her mutant powers are basically werewolfy, but she was a very religious
Yeah.
little girl
So
and does not
her
love that.
superpowers are werewolf powers and
Yeah,
guilt.
but I believe it was an X Factor story where she actually ended up having a werewolf baby, and then
Oh, man,
Jack
I've
Russell,
forgotten
Werewolf by
about
Night,
that.
was brought in to help sort of
Deal.
guide the child through. Like it was very much just similar to like the totemic powers of Spider-Man and Morlun and all that stuff. They kind of did
man,
a
we're going
similar
deep
thing
here.
with wolves and werewolves and that whole like sort of.
Because his is a family curse.
I believe so. I
And
believe
hers
so.
is a mutant power.
Hers is a mutant
but they
power,
both
yeah.
kind of look recognizably like werewolves to
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, whatever her mutant power was, it triggered like a werewolf. It's
Yeah,
a little
there's
mushy.
a
It's
whole
bit
run. I
mushy.
should have revisited. I didn't even think about it until just now. But there was a whole run where it was Wolfsbane, Werewolf by Night, and then there were like 2 or 3 other werewolf
Is Farrell
characters.
in that? Farrell, who, by the way, I have now learned is a different character.
Farrell is
I
a
got
different-
that wire crossed in the early 90s and
Oh,
never uncrossed
we
it.
all did. I mean, like,
Yeah,
I think
she was the
Farrell
X-Force one.
was because, like, for some, I think they just told Liefeld that he couldn't use
Wolfsbane.
Rain.
That makes
So he was
way
like,
more
Fine.
sense. I should have known that.
I'm gonna have Farrell, who's like Wolfsbane, except angry and
That must
hot
be
and
why I wasn't-
hardcore. It doesn't ever change into a
I was
human.
never
She's
a
just-
fan of Farrell.
I was never a fan of Farrell.
Never a
either.
fan of Farrell. Yeah, poor
Poor
Farrell.
Farrell. She had a very unfortunate costume. We should really do our topic.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right.
It's time for our
Do we
topic.
have a
It's time
pick?
for a topic.
We do.
we have
we
one?
do have a pick. So each week, we here on the Wednesday Club take a topic that is voted on by or like put forward by you, our viewers.
Where I have
and
to kill my kids.
Yeah, and we talk for
It only
5
happened
minutes, and then
once.
we take 5 minutes and put a counter up and talk about whatever we put up on the screen and discuss our answers. And I will begin this one, which is the topic is pick a classic monster and describe their day job when they aren't being monsters. And I will start with this.
Who's this question come from?
This comes from Lady Emphy, and we can roll
Thank you,
the.
Lady Emphy.
Thank you, Lady
Lady
Emphy.
Emphy.
Let's
Woo-woo.
roll the
Boop, boop, boop,
clock. My pick would probably be Dracula. I'll talk about Dracula.
Their day job.
I think if you're going to have a day job as a vampire, my whole thing is you might as well use all of that coffin time. I'm not a big fan of sleep, and if you're dead, I don't think you necessarily need it. So like, why spend your time in a coffin? I would think about jobs that you can do indoors, like sleep studies. I think working with sleep studies would be a great job for a vampire.
Oh my God.
You don't think that's a little tempting? Hello, my snack bar.
I mean, like, I figure at that point, like, most Ralphs at this point have a pretty decent butcher block that I'm sure you can get things. I'm a believer in the whole theory of, like, My Best Friend's a Vampire, like 80s comedy vampires where you actually have butchers who specialize in, like, what you need.
Sure.
The other thing you could do, of course, is be an editor, because if you've ever met anybody who's a video editor, you know that you work in a room without windows, because windows
so
are
funny.
the devil if you're actually
Dracula
trying to edit.
is an editor.
He is a video editor.
Oh
With that, I'm going to say read Bite Club if you're looking for some fun vampire stories of like on a White Wolf 5.
Oh
Over to
my
you.
God.
Now that I've
amazing.
dropped it,
I've got one. Do you have one?
You go.
you go.
Manphibian.
Amphibian!
You got to talk about Manphibian. Manphibian, during the day, he knows he's terrifying. He fights creatures at night, but at day, when he can make money because he's not fighting crime, he needs to still stay hidden from the general populace. He's a sewer worker. He stays in the sewers. He makes sure they're clean. He finds the crocodiles. Maybe he's a crocodile hunter in New York. If that's
Amphibian
actually a
crocodile
thing.
hunter.
Maybe he's a crocodile hunter down in New Orleans. But if he wants to stay in the city to fight crime in the city at night with his Legion of Monsters buddies, he's a sewer worker. It makes total sense. He can breathe underwater. He can go find all the clogs that might be down there. He probably has a completely different sense of taste and smell because he's from outer space, so maybe the sewers don't bother him as much. I'm calling sewer worker
I feel like
from Amphibian.
there's some strong theories on how he feels about sewer work, but all right, I'm into it.
Am I insulting sewer workers?
No.
I'm taking the cartoony sewer urchin.
It's a good public works
Yeah.
job. I'm sure it comes
Yeah.
with really solid benefits
All
to
right.
the market.
Here's my potential pitch. I think if you are, for instance, cursed as a werewolf, you might want to consider training in psychology or therapy.
Oh,
Here are
interesting.
my reasons. One, you are going to spend the rest of your life with this whole I'm struggling with urges that I don't understand thing. Like, that's going to sort of be something that you might want to invest some energy into learning for yourself. But B, you might be a particularly talented detector of emotions in others because you probably have some enhanced senses.
Yeah.
So you're going to have sort of an innate sense when people are anxious, when people are afraid, when people are having emotional responses, you're probably going to pick up some things that are not obvious to the casual observer.
Werewolf analyst.
Yeah,
Werewolf
werewolf
psychoanalyst.
I think that it might be a good fit
Because
for
you
your
could be like,
skills.
Freudian by night.
Oh my God, Freudian by day.
And you can basically arrange not to have appointments on the 3 days a month that you are going to be really exhausted from running around in the woods.
From running
or
around and
whatever.
trying to keep from killing things.
So-
Yeah,
Humans,
you can
at
have a
least.
pretty decent barrier between your private life there.
I'm gonna mention there's only two of the classic Universal monsters that we haven't given jobs to, which are the Mummy and Frankenstein's monster.
Okay.
What do Frankenstein's monster and what is the Mummy's day job? What is Frankenstein monster's day job?
What is the mummy's day job?
Other than like maybe working as a ambulance driver because you have a never-ending.
Oh my
amount of
God.
AC
Well,
energy.
it's not
That's
never
not
ending.
sanitary at
That's-
all.
It's very unsanitary.
It's very
I've gotta-
unsanitary, but it's an emergency. We're all out. I don't know. That's the best I got right now.
So does the mummy have like a way to disguise themselves for this duty?
Because like they're gonna terrify people if they show up like, I can take care of you. Oh God, no!
I mean, like they're unconscious on the floor. They've swallowed a chicken bone. I don't think they're really going to be complaining about who's like dealing with them. To be fair, that's a weird
Okay.
time. Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
Or just like a low body temperature. And,
Frankenstein's-
I see him as
monster.
kind of like a hospital orderly. I don't know.
What?
That's what came to mind. I don't know.
You want that guy putting a needle in your arm? He's
No!
7 feet tall and extremely
he's already
clumsy.
wearing.
can't be a
he's wearing doctor
fireman.
shoes.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
I think Orgo. If we could address, I had one for Orgo.
Okay.
Spy model.
He destroys buildings.
Yeah, good.
He's a
good.
destruction guy. He's like, we need to tear down this building, baby.
Side note, this is a real thing that Squirrel Girl does to rehabilitate one of her enemies.
Really?
Finds a more constructive outlet for his abilities. Thank you, Ryan North.
Well,
We should
That's
probably
it.
wrap this up.
Yeah,
That's
we're
it, 5
wrapping
minutes.
up. That's all the time we have
covered
here on the
even more
Wednesday Club for
monsters.
our little 5-minute topic. Thank you for letting us do this, and remember that we have a few minutes left. But in the meantime, you can check us out every Wednesday, 7 to 9.
on Geek and Sunday Twitch and Join Team Alpha.
Thank you.
JoinTeamAlpha.com.
So we're going to
Project
keep talking to you
Alpha,
guys because
Project Alpha.
we actually have a few minutes. But
We got a couple
Yeah,
minutes.
we know the URL. We work here.
So yeah, let's take a look. I'm going to dive into the.
Yeah, do we have some good questions about other
a
monsters?
few other for non-horror.
And/or Frankenstein's day job because we didn't find one for it.
There's an alpha
Frankenstein's
question for
monster.
a White Wolf type setting in comic form, yay or nay? I would say like Bike Club is like one of the closest I can think of
a
like
lot
a
of
White Wolfy
90s
kind
Vertigo.
Yeah, 90s Vertigo was really into the idea of I drink blood, but also have like an impossibly complex social life, which is basically White Wolf.
How do we feel about Wendigo? Is he a monster?
Ooh.
Wendigo!
It's a curse.
But a curse can
other
still be a
curses that
monster,
we talked
right?
about
'Cause, like-
Etrigan. We've got some contributions from off screen here from B. Dave Walters, who's pointing out that the Wendigo is cursed and not strictly sort of a natural born monster.
But a werewolf is also cursed.
yeah.
We were talking about a werewolf as a monster.
And the Wendigo fits in that sort of folklore category
Yeah.
of like which of these things count as monsters.
It's a were-beast, essentially.
It's a very, we went for a very broad topic, and I think
and that
we're very
depends whether we're also
specifically-
literally talking about the Alpha Flight superhero Wendigo.
And as this is sort of wrapping up a bunch of different questions from like next day was what scarier monster villain looks like Doomsday villain monsters or Loki or Lex Luthor villain monsters like the Joker? That's like the notion of like is the greatest monster of all
Human?
man?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say
But yeah,
so.
no,
Yeah.
we're awful.
Have you read the news?
Stanley's monster. That's a whole nother character that we can get into.
Ooh, monstrous.
Yep.
Man, speaking, I can't believe I left that out when I'm like, women are writing female stories about women monsters and dealing with that. Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda have a wonderful and very disturbing image book called Monstrous,
Thank
which
you, Ricky
is
Galletti.
about a cool, complex fantasy universe with sort of a civilizational conflict that I don't want to get into, but a very conflicted and sort of
It's a-
damaged female
It is a
heroine.
complicated book, and I mean that is
is.
in a good way.
Yeah.
That's
Monstrous.
good. All right.
Vampire Hunter D, which is another classic. It's actually technically Vampire Hunter D isn't a comic book. It's technically a series of novels, but it is a great.
Novels before comics?
There's like a couple like comic-y things, but it's mostly there's an American comic book that is actually I helped put together, which I'm very proud of, which is a retelling of a short story that had never been published in English, which is a really, really good read if you want to take a look at Brandon Easton worked on it a whole bunch. It's great, people. It's a
have
great book.
So much more that we need to get to, and this is so we're well into our October Halloween-a-thon, Hallow Wednesdays.
Yeah. Hello Wednesday.
Well, Hello Wednesday. We're going to be doing scary stuff all month. Next week is Hellboy.
with Liam O'Brien.
Liam O'Brien.
Liam.
And I'm taking over. I'm going to also, other than that show I do on Thursdays, which is a whole thing, I'm going to be taking over Gather Your
I haven't seen
Party.
you since last Thursday.
Yay.
I miss you. I miss you so much.
Continue.
I'm taking over Gather Your Party for the next, for the duration, for the rest of the year, and we're starting this Friday with a celebration of gothiness with Gather Your Goth. So we're going to be doing that on. That's
Also,
Thursday.
I have a quick shout out. If you like scary stuff, you need to stay tuned to Geek and Sundry's Twitter right now because there were 2 announcements this morning that you should be extremely into. Our own Whitney Moore has a show coming up on Alpha that is going to just blow your head off in a good way. And
In a good way.
a certain Sagas of Sundry is coming back. So check all of that out and see you next week.
And see you next week. And
Yeah.
and please.
Matt Key at the Matt Key on Twitter.
Amy Dallen at Enthusi, Amy.
And I'm Taliesin Jaffe at Executive Goth, and please stay tuned for Ask Your
Black Geek friend.
And
Yeah.
I almost said Greek, and I was like, that's not
Ask
Greek.
your Black Greek friend.
Oh, we'll work on that one as well.
Stay tuned. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.